And we should be live. I think. Let me go to YouTube real quick. Why, hello there. Okay, well, streams stream came up, but everything. Oh, there we go. Okay, so pretty much good now.
Hello, hello.
So if you go to YouTube and you go to the link, you should be able to see it live.
Yeah, hold on.
So
Let me
yeah, my link
I
just came up.
blocked YouTube on my main desktop as a precautionary measure for productivity.
What a
I
wonderful step.
have stuff I need to get done these couple days that I'm off from work, but hold on, let me open it here on the
Come
laptop.
on, Sergio. Come on.
Hold on. I got the
No, man.
laptop here.
All I'm saying is that you should have the ability to, like stop yourself from getting so.
Yeah. I wish, dude. I wish. Okay, so hold on. So what I'm seeing here. Okay, so so there's you and me on the left here, and then it's your desktop. I'm looking at your YouTube studio thing, and that's what's being streamed right now.
Okay, can you see our cameras like fine or?
Yeah. Look.
Perfect. Alrighty then. Well, let's get the show on the road, my friend.
Okay, let me see here. All right. Well.
Alrighty then. I'll go ahead and start us off. Welcome back to another episode of the Co-Op Syndicate, a bootlegged episode featuring Jordan's crappy PC setup and our favorite guest slash third rotating panelist Sergio Sotolongo. Welcome back.
Oh,
Sir.
am I rotating right now? Is that what I'm doing? I'm rotating.
Pretty much.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Nothing much, man. Nothing much. So the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about today is the fact that E3 is no longer fun.
It's no longer fun.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, a lot of people have been hating it. All I see is the graphics are bad. What is that game? That's an indie game. Indie games are terrible. Oh, it's not. It's not Call of Duty. Like where's the hype at E3? So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. I mean, I know you saw most of E3. Did you watch all the shows, or did you skip some of them?
No. So I've been watching E3 for long enough to know that there are certain shows that are just worth avoiding. So like I was, I mean, obviously EA, no, but for real, like EA Play, right? Like that, obviously that's in July. We haven't seen that one yet, but every year I've watched EA, and every year it's by the end of it, I'm like, that was a waste of 45 minutes, an hour, whatever. Like there was barely any entertainment value. There wasn't a whole lot of the games there that I cared about. So a majority of the shows I skipped, right? And, to my credit, I ended up seeing all the fun stuff and missing all of the boring stuff, right? Like if I had sat through, Take-Two's E3 presentation, then I would have been, lectured for 45 minutes, in a Zoom call, right? Waiting to see a clip of GTA Enhanced Edition or something, and meanwhile I'm getting slapped around over here because I'm not smart enough to know what's going on in the world or something like that. I don't want to subject myself to that kind of torture, right? So I didn't watch Take-Two. I didn't watch most of the shows. The ones I watched were Summer Games Fest. I watched Xbox and Nintendo, and I streamed all three of those. And I enjoyed all three of those shows. There were a lot of games there that I didn't care for necessarily, but there was at least one great moment at each of those shows. For me, at least, right?
Okay.
You had Metroid at Nintendo. You had Pirates of the Caribbean at Xbox. You had Elden Ring at Summer Games Fest.
Right.
I felt like I had a great time. And those shows felt fun to watch. They felt well paced. So I had a great time. I don't know what some people were expecting, where it's like, oh, the graphics are terrible, or this or that, or whatever it ends up being. But if you expect the moon. I don't know. If it's your first E3 and you're expecting the moon, then fine. Maybe that's not your fault. But if you've been around the block, I mean, come on, dude.
No, I with that I could say I agree, right? So the biggest thing for me, right, is that I actually did enjoy E3. The disappointment for me at E3 isn't whether I think, okay, so I'm gonna start off with my theory, right? And maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. Usually, I have Mike to bounce off of, but I mean, let's get a different opinion in this for today, right? So
Sure.
Here's my thing about E3. Every time that I see people say E3 was great, it's usually around the fact that an E3 like a showcase that was made is based around an IP that's already been established for previous years. And whenever there's a new IP to come out, people are like, "Well, I'm not connected to this, so there's no games for me. Therefore, nothing was showed at E3, right?" And that to
Hmm.
me kind of upsets me because it's like, yeah, I mean, we can just sit here and say that gaming's all Zelda, Mario, and Pokemon for the rest of our lives, or say it's God of War and Sly Cooper and Jack and Daxter. But then what about like creating something new? Like what when do we say, hey, look, I'm excited for a new IP, even if they've only showed like a cinematic trailer because hey, it's something new, right? And that's kind of what I felt about this E3. I felt like they just showed me hundreds and hundreds of games. They didn't show me like a big fat like Sony showcase. But
Hmm.
I see everyone saying like, "Oh, there's nothing good at E3. Like they didn't show any gameplay, this and that." I know that the big thing is always gameplay, but sometimes it's also nice to just know that something's coming, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I know. We were joking about this a couple episodes ago about the whole title card slash cocktail napkin thing, where it's like they just keep showing all these random titles of games that are potentially coming
Yeah,
but
well,
never do.
Microsoft's doing a lot of that, where they just keep announcing games, CG
Right.
trailer or a logo or this or that, and we're not seeing a whole lot. So,
Right.
I understand the criticism.
So, with that being said, so okay, so going back to what you said, just to make sure I heard you. So you pretty much watched the big three. You didn't watch any of the small stuff, but then you didn't actually watch like, for example, Future Game Show, PC Game Show.
No, those I did not catch. I caught a
Okay.
little bit of PC game show. I had it on in the background while I was like working on graphics or whatever for the Xbox showcase,
Uh huh.
but I wasn't watching it like directly because again, they didn't have a whole lot of stuff that going into it I was sort of excited enough to sit through the whole show for, you know? Like if Valve was going to be there with the Steam Pal, then fine, I would have sat there and I would have watched the show.
Mm-hmm.
But what did Gabe Newell announce there? He announced that they're doing a summer games fest of their own on Steam where you can play a bunch of demos, which is great.
Right.
That's great that people can play. I've always said that for years that the biggest missed opportunity for E3 is not allowing the people at home to take part in the excitement of the event by playing the demos at home.
Right.
And I get that part of that is because it's, some of those games are running on hardware on PCs that are spec'd to the consoles that they're targeting.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, to allow everyone to be able to partake in that, I feel is only going to help increase the exposure of the game, because if more people can access the game, more people are streaming the game, that means there are more places for people to onboard and find out about what these new games are, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, well, that's the Steam Game Fest, right? And the new
Right.
Xbox demo thing that they just brought up, where you can go and try
Yeah,
out all
yeah.
their demos. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing that I was hoping Sony would jump on now that they're being more, community friendly with like the esports thing. But I mean, it's a missed opportunity. Maybe they just, well, they don't want to be a part of E3 anyways, right? They're just telling people like, hey, f off
Yeah, they
Nintendo.
want to do their own thing, it seems like.
They want to be Nintendo, right? But yeah, I mean, you're totally right on that. I saw all these crazy demos every time I go up like on a random person stream or whatever. They're always streaming some new Steam game, trying out something new, and it's just exciting. The biggest thing though I could say is that I think Michael could agree with me on this. Which I actually didn't mention. So Michael's out for this week. I'm just gonna put it out there. Michael's actually out for this week. Unfortunately, due to some issues like that he has to deal with at home. Hopefully he'll be back next week or the following week after that. If not, we'll just keep the show going as long as we can. I'll keep dragging it on my tiny crappy PC until he can get back. You know. But yeah, going back to the conversation, right? I mean, the biggest thing for me is that there's a lot of games out there that aren't the next God of War, right? They're not the next Halo, and they're probably like Hades, or they're probably like the next which we'll probably never get, but the next game from Campo Santo, right? From they made Firewatch for reference.
Hmm.
And the idea of that behind what I'm trying to say there is that a lot of times like people forget that gaming's an experience to be had, and it's become more of I attribute it to the same thing as the Scorsese comment on the Marvel universe, where gaming has become more of a friggin' like theme park than anything at
Hmm.
all. Because what are the games that people mostly connect with are the easy simple games, which we were just talking about before we started the stream, right? It's the easily digestible games that don't require you to go nuts, right?
Sure.
And I see that a lot of people might find frustration with like saying like getting into a cinematic thriller. Like it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with this long story. Or they'll get into something like I don't know, something complex like StarCraft, and they'll be like, oh, I don't want to deal with these complex mechanics. I just want to run, shoot, go. And then that's pretty much where Fortnite and Call of Duty comes in because it fills that so easily. But I feel like gaming as a hobby, like people don't want to do it based off of what it was originally intended, right? And I'm saying this like loosely because obviously it means something different to everyone, right? When the great minds who created Pong and then started creating these text adventures and Ultima Online, and then id Software comes in with John Romero and John Carmack, and they started bringing in this in. Gaming was about escaping your world and jumping into a new one, and then immersing yourself with like the mechanics of the game world, right? But now it's not about that anymore. It's more about like how much time can I waste before I have to go back to work or whatever. And I think people are missing the impact of gaming for that. I don't know if you feel the same way as I do, but
No, I guess I can understand that to some degree. Like the way you're talking about like how much time you can waste before you have to go back to work, right? Like, and I'm not going to use Destiny as an example of like a waste of time.
it is a waste of
But
time.
but no. I mean, whatever. I mean,
Look,
your opinion on it, whatever it is.
No. I'm serious. Look at this. Time. There's a little website for it.
Oh boy.
Look at this crap. I'm gonna. Well, I don't know if I can find a random thing. Oh yeah, leaderboard. Look at this. This is called time wasted on Destiny. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is just
No. I want to see this number too.
This is important. So this is how much a person has spent their life on Destiny right now, right here. These are like, I don't want to like put all these IDs, but it's public information, so just don't harass them. But essentially, people have wasted over 15,000 hours, close to 16,000, one person on Destiny.
Sounds my phone
as of today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it is technically a time waster, but all forms of entertainment are time wasted. The problem is, it's like, how much of an impact do you want to take away from entertainment, right? That's just what I was trying to get at.
So the point I wanted to make, right? Waste is that's a word that it really depends on how you actually value the experience of what it is you played. Because if you played Destiny, right, for 15,000 hours, right, and of it, then I wouldn't consider that a waste, right? It was something that you enjoyed. It was something that was worth your time and something that you determined that was worth whatever value that you got out of it, right? But you do have a preponderance of these, at least in the AAA space, right? The large scale type games. You do have the time sinks, and I think that's a better word for it, is the games that demand a significant amount of time investment in order to get, in order to be able to extract maximum value from them, right? Games like Destiny, games like The Division, games like Fortnite, games like, Apex Legends, whatever, these games that are run around battle passes generally tend to be free to play, but they rely very heavily on the social element, right? Keeping you locked into a certain ecosystem, keeping you locked into our certain game, so that you're not spending any potential, battle pass dollars or whatever, even time, anywhere else.
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
And then it feeds into what you're talking about of, okay, just play this one thing over and over and over again until you get until you have to go back to work the next day. Because if all your friends are playing the same game and you decide that tonight you want to go play Chris Tales, right? I mean, that game hasn't come out yet, but some like indie game, right?
Yeah.
If you want to go play some indie game, then all of a sudden, next time that you want to go, hang out in Warzone with your boys, you're lagging behind, right? They've leveled up ahead of you. They have more items than you. You're lagging behind. And now all of a sudden they're carrying you in the squad, versus if you were there every night with them, then you guys are on the same level and you guys are able to pull each other's weight. Right. So it almost becomes like a social obligation for some of these games in order to continue to, I guess, keep up with the Joneses, right? On some level, if you want to be able to actually keep up with your friends. And the publishers are aware of this. The publishers know this. That's built into the business model, right? So if you have a lot of games that are relying on keeping you in there, coercion seems like a strong word to use for that. But right, we're back to that. But coercion seems like a strong word, but it really does come down to, you kind of have to decide what kind of games do you want to play. right?
Yeah,
And there are certain games that are just going to demand more from you than others, right?
of
So
course.
if the value judgment you've made is I want to play games with my friends, then yeah, maybe you only get to play Rainbow Six Siege and Call of Duty Warzone, right? But if you want to experience different stuff, if you want to, experience different perspectives, if you want to play more, if you want to see stuff like Chris Tales, like Road 96, like
Mhm.
Severed Steel, like Hades, all of these, indie games that'll give you something that's different than you would get from the AAA space, then yeah, you kind of have to you have to pick which one you're going to give up, you know. And I
Of
think I
course.
think what you're finding with what people are complaining about is that they want to have their cake and eat it too. Where if I don't have the next Sly Cooper and the next Jack and Daxter and the next Uncharted and all this at a show, then it didn't count, right?
Right.
Whereas
Right.
the show's not targeted at Joe Schmo or Randy Rando, right? It's a wide gamut. It's showing you the whole slate of software. Obviously, not everything in there is going to be targeted at you, but
Yeah.
again, right? It comes down to uh, what are you willing to take a risk on? Are you willing to try out a little indie game that maybe you won't like, that you got to put in 10 hours before you find out if you like it? Or and maybe 10 hours is very long. I don't put in more than like 3 hours of the game before I decide if I don't like it or not.
Well,
But
yeah. I mean,
uh
indies normally aren't that long,
sure, yeah,
anyways.
and they're not even that long generally. So are you going to take the risk on something you don't know, spend $25 on something that you might play for 2 or 3 hours you don't like, or are you going to go lean into something that you're going to like because it's attached to a brand that you already know and appreciate and you're familiar with and all that, right? So
Right.
I think people are, they're, like I said, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, and I think that's ultimately what that comes down to, or the reaction you're seeing online
Yeah,
rather.
yeah. I mean, it could be attributed because I obviously like the reason why I have these thoughts is because I always try to think about why these people like a certain thing or why they dislike a certain
Mm-hmm.
thing. I always try to put like I know what my feelings are, or at least I've been trying to become true to them in the sense of like I really like Sony's games, so I'm gonna prioritize buying Sony's games over Ubisoft, right? I mean, and that's an easy choice. Do you really want a game that's gonna come out glitch day one, or do you want a solid experience that's gonna be hit the ground running, right? Not to say that
Sure.
Sony games don't come out glitched because Returnal came out crapping out on everyone's PS5 and Ratchet and Clank, for as great as it is, still has some weird streaming issues where I had this one issue where I was actually there's a mechanic where you switch between dimensions in a map, and
Mm-hmm.
in this one situation, no matter what, it's 100% fail the first time you do it unless you restart the checkpoint. You hit this like this crystal to switch to another dimension, and the map just deloads, and you're just like floating in the air.
Like you're just in like negative space.
Yeah, you're just like in negative space, just staring out into like the nothingness. So then I had to like, in order to edit it for my YouTube walkthrough, I had to small editing tricks, right? I opened up the map, made it look like I was looking at the map, and then I cut out, cut in, do the checkpoint, cut back in with the recording, so on and so forth. But the point is, it's like it happened, right? So I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
that Sony games are perfect, right? But if you compare it to like, say Ubisoft's like, oh, we're gonna make your whole save file crap out on you after like 8 megs, that's I'm gonna place my bet on the fact that when I spend $70 on a new game, it's gonna end up being good on Sony versus like Ubisoft, which is like probably gonna come out glitched, right? So I
Sure.
get that point, but what I'm trying to say is like I always try to understand both points, right? Now I've spent countless hours in Destiny, and probably not like nowhere near as much as 15,000. I spent probably close to like in the second game probably close to like 1,000 hours, and then in the first game I spent like 2 or 3 thousand hours, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
know the like the feeling of like having to open up a new game and be like, oh man, this is a new game, it's new mechanics versus oh I know Destiny, oh this expansion, oh it's just the same thing, but it's just a couple extra little gimmicky things here and there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying with like, oh I want my cake and eat it too is like everybody wants to grab Call of Duty. It's like wow, if I could just grab Call of Duty and place it in another game, then that game will automatically, be great for me. And the honest idea is like you obviously want, or the point of a game is to give you an experience that's different, right? So I'm not gonna expect to get Modern Warfare mechanics in like Doom, for example, which is supposed to be like this aggressive, over the top, hyper violence game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the honest answer is it's like when people say, "Oh, I want another game like I want that game to be like COD," I feel like what they really mean to say, which is why I say that the system always fails, is that if you look at Call of Duty, you know, I mean, you've probably fallen off the grid from the series as much as I have. The last one I played was the 2019 reboot of Modern Warfare. The team does extremely solid like animation and graphical work. Like they are one of the high end of like the whole industry. They found out how to make everything work on PlayStation 4 the way that it looks like next gen almost by, you know, completely like taking over your entire hard drive with a 200 gig file size. But what I'm trying to say is what people want is that they want to grab that and see that blown up into different types of genres, right? In the same way that I love God of War, but I want to see what Santa Monica can do with that graphical fidelity and that type of skill set of storytelling in a sci-fi, other planet, otherworldly type of adventure, right?
Mhm.
I'd like to see them do what they did with God of War, but something that's not God of War. And I think that's what people feel when they look at like Battlefield. It's like, oh well, it doesn't play as fast as COD or whatever. Or when Battlefield players go over to COD and it's like, oh well, there's no vehicles. Where's like the big tactical building stuff, you know? And that comes across with what you're saying, which is like I want my cake and eat it too. So I know what people feel, but I also like I always try to keep my mind open because it's like there's a reason why people like games like for example like Heavy Rain that are just
Mhm.
cinematic um point and clicks, right? With like QTEs and there's a reason why people like Ratchet and Clank, which is like supposedly a children's game. Um so with that said, I mean, when people tell me E3 is boring, it's like, okay, do you like only one thing? Because I mean, when I saw E3, I saw like over 100 games, and there was like a bunch of indies that were great. Like there's this new one, where you're playing like this reporter that witnessed a UFO sighting of people getting abducted, and you're literally driving around like the Midwest of the U.S.
Mhm.
like trying to hunt down UFO sightings. That sounds interesting to me. That's a
That
unique
sounds interesting to
experience.
me too. Do you remember what that's called?
It's on the David Jaffe show. Give me 1 second. I'll look it up now.
Let me see.
I'll look it
UFO
up right now.
investigation indie game.
I'll tell you what it. I'll tell you what it is. It's called They Are Here. They Are Here. Let's look at
They are here.
yeah. So check this out,
Okay.
right? Alien abduction horror. Gameplay. Let me look up gameplay.
Alien abduction horror on Steam.
Yeah. So here's a demo.
Let's talk Cash App.
Oh
Oops.
shit, this is a demo?
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. That's
I'm
what I'm
gonna, I'm
saying.
gonna have to download that.
Steam is so freaking great. All right. So check this out. So this is the
Yeah,
game, right? It
that's
pretty
cool.
much plays like Outlast.
Mm-hmm.
So already I can tell that anybody that likes COD is gonna be, or is like a big fanatic of COD, they're gonna be like, "Oh, this is a walking simulator. This doesn't seem like it's for me, right?" I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's up to you whether you want to try new experiences or not, right? You don't go to a new restaurant and then order the Big Mac from McDonald's. You go order like spaghetti or whatever they have on their menu, you know?
Yeah.
When you go to the movies, I mean, you could be like me that only goes to see Marvel movies or whatever and then waits for everything to come out on Netflix. But which is another conversation we had later, but you know, when I you go to the movies, you go to see something new. You go to a beach at a different state to see how the beaches are in a different state, how they're
Mm-hmm.
designed, you know, the architecture of the buildings, or you know how the sand, how white it is, or how clean the beach is, all that stuff.
Sure, sure.
And that's what I'm trying to say with this, right? Like in E3, like if you're looking at E3 with just being like, I only care about COD, like don't bother watching the show because you're just gonna hate it every time. If you're going into it, it's like I want to see a new experience. Well, there was over 100 games to show, and look, here's one right here that's pretty interesting right now. It's literally Outlast and Slender combined. Unique
Yeah,
experience right
yeah,
here.
no. I mean, that's the thing is that if you're, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. If you're not willing to venture out of your gaming comfort zone, then you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. You know, when if you're walking into the Microsoft event expecting every game to look a certain way or everything to look like Halo or everything to be Forza or something like that, like yeah,
Yeah,
you may get a little sliver that's related to you. But again, you're not going to care about Euclidean Chronicles or whatever the Japanese game that they had there was, So I don't know. I mean, the real question is, can those people even be reached, right? Because
right.
I mean,
No,
for
I
for
mean,
real though, like,
well, yeah. I mean, but that also, I mean, I don't wanna put out like saying like, oh, it's because Twitter and this and that, right? Because I mean, there's people that obviously think about it more like they're more conscious about these like decisions, like to whether to try something new or not. They're more open-minded versus like a Twitter, which is like they're obviously not of their opinion, right? When somebody's on Twitter and they tell you straight up, "Oh, that game sucks" or "That game's good," they're literally just telling you that for the sake of just getting you like to just drive you up a wall. They're just trying to piss you off, right? They
You know,
don't.
Twitter's a cesspool.
It is. It's literally
There's
just
no
a
other way
race,
to
a
put
race
it.
to
It's
the
a
bottom.
fucking cesspool.
It's literally a race to the bottom of the brainstem, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, those people can't be reached through Twitter, but I'm sure if you speak to them in a normal fashion, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have general say in the thing
Hmm.
regarding that. But regarding like the whole E3 like being boring, I mean, yeah, I guess we can talk about Xbox, right? So Xbox's presentation, and I think you can agree with this. They basically showed no gameplay, right? Other than Horizon and like a couple things here and there. You were most excited about the Pirates of the Caribbean thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Well, they didn't have, you're right. They did not have like a whole lot of like live demonstrations of whatever games they were showing off. A lot of it was just trailer after trailer after trailer. But, you know, it reminded me a lot of Sony 2016, right? When they had that event at the theater where they basically just had trailer back to back to back to back, the occasional human presenter here and there. Um
Right.
but it really gave the show a very quick pace. It didn't feel bogged down. It didn't feel like they were just droning on and on and on and on about the fur physics of the dog and Call of Duty Ghost or something like that. It felt like there was something for everyone there, and even if whatever was on screen at the moment wasn't for you, then there was something coming up pretty quickly that might appeal to you, right? Like there was an extended trailer for Stalker 2. And I played a little bit of the first one, it didn't really speak to me, so I was kind of like disengaged with Stalker 2. But then I think right after that was Contraband, which is another one of those JPEG announcements, right? I mean, obviously there was an animated trailer, but there's no gameplay, there's no nothing, right? It was telling you an open world adventure from the makers of Just Cause, Contraband, and that's it. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll see you in 2024, maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean,
if that's all you're showing me.
They're making Harry Potter right now.
Right. No,
which
well,
they actually did show
is that
gameplay
the
of.
same studio?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
How many people are working at that studio? Is it? I'm guessing it's more than one team. Then is it, or is it just a single team?
They have like a split team, and then they'll prioritize based on deadlines. They do that all the time. And Insomniac has like 4 projects right now coming up, which we'll talk about that later. But yeah, all these studios are starting to say like, I think that basically the PS4 was the PS1 era for HD, if that makes sense. So like the PS1 was everybody's like testing out their engines, they're trying to learn how to do game design and all that stuff. Then PS2 comes out and boom, there's like 4,000 plus games all over the place. There's all sorts of stuff and all sorts of creativity. Then of course the PS3 era came in, the graphical uphaul, and then of course they all streamlined it to trying to make the best games possible within the limited resources or whatever, right? It's like a learning curve. So then the PS4 comes in, it's a whole new architecture. Now they're jumping into full HD. So they're relearning the systems again. The development slowed down. Sony, instead of releasing like 30 plus exclusives, they released on like 20 or whatever. Like they slowed down. Like each company made like 1 or 2 games throughout the thing. And now I'm starting to notice that they're starting to get the hang of it, and development is starting to speed up again with the PS5, right? So what every developer has been saying, and I'm saying this anecdotally, is that essentially development has gotten so easy and streamlined with the new PlayStation and the Xbox and the PC equipment and like Unreal Engine 5 that making games is going to be 10 times faster. I've also heard that, like, for example, Jim Ryan is like, we really took a time to learn what we were doing with like game engines and game design during the PS4 era, taking like 6+ years to develop Last of Us Part 2 or something. But we're gonna try and flip that around and now start, producing faster, right? Whether that means that we might see get less like advances to certain things. I mean, sure, right? If you look at Insomniac, right, everyone complains that the new Ratchet and Clank, for as great as it is, it's like the same crap that we've had since the beginning. I would say it's actually a little less than that, because we didn't have space traveling, or like space combat in the form of Battlefront in Ratchet and Clank, which we did in Ratchet and Clank 1, 2, and 3. So well, 1 and 2. So there's a lot of things that could be said about like Insomniac's like faster production rate, and the fact that with each thing they'll probably add like 1 or 2 new mechanics, and that'll be it. versus like something like God of War, which is like a complete revamp. But regarding that, development has sped up a lot. I mean, right now, another game that you should have mentioned is Redfall from the creators of Dishonored,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's been
yeah.
in
That
development
was
for
the
what?
vampire one, right?
Yeah, it's been in development for what, like 4 or 5 years now, while also developing the
Well,
new game.
Arcane has multiple studios in multiple
Yeah,
places. There's Leon, there's Austin, and I think they have a third studio too, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
exactly. And Avalanche
So
Avalanche has a couple teams that are in there too that are
yeah.
doing, and that's pretty much what it's going. I mean, that's what it is, right? When you're in the game of something that's not games as a service where you need all hands on deck, the goal is to, like split up your teams and make different products, right? Because you only really need like what, a max of 200 people to do something like Last of Us. You don't need 1,000 people for that. So if you have 1,000 people under your wing, you spread your wings, right? I mean,
Hmm. Unless you're Rockstar.
unless you're Rockstar, right? And then you just, you're a rock star,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah, no, and then you just make cars for GTA Online over
Exactly.
and over and over
Well,
again.
I mean, you got to think about it, right? From a business perspective, if your big top dogs all get fired or leave, you kind of have a fear of putting out a new product, right? Because I mean, Dan
Hmm.
Houser quit. He got tired of it. He was like, I'm working 70 hours a week to make story. The other guy, I forgot his name, quit, or like he quit because he didn't get his royalties. Another guy got
I think it was
fired.
Leslie Benzies,
Yeah,
right?
Leslie
Is that who you're talking
Benzies
about?
quit
Yeah.
because he didn't get his royalties after GTA 5 launched. And everybody was stressed out, and they were like, stretched beyond what they could do.
Did both Hauser brothers leave?
No, no, no. So the other Hauser brother is the CEO of the company. He stayed. He's the prez, the big cheese.
Mm-hmm.
So
Rockstar Games.
yeah,
Sam Hauser, Dan Hauser. Okay, fine. But then who's? No, that's founders. Okay, yeah, no, President Sam Hauser. Okay, so Sam's still there,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean
So I mean, with
that's another way to do it.
Rockstar, I understand their position because it's like, they lost the drivers, or many of the drivers that pushed GTA and Red Dead and all that stuff forward, right? They
Right.
need to resituate. But in other cases, yeah, I don't understand the situation, right? Like with Destiny, I mean, that like they've been swearing forever that ever since they left Activision, there's this new vision and they're gonna revamp Destiny. It's like we're all still waiting, and
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I'm sick and tired of waiting. I've for the most part skipped a season for the first time, and I'm probably not gonna come back. Like I'm probably gonna take a break, or maybe I'll just play the story, but I won't do all the stuff I paid for, because it's just like at this point, it's like I'm kind of, I only care about the main stuff. But anyways, go ahead and continue with your point. I'm sorry, we went off like a
No,
complete tangent.
no, no. Well, no, you were making a point
Oh yeah, yeah,
about
no, the
the size of
development's
these
faster,
teams.
right? And that leads into something else I want to talk about later with you regarding the Sony conference that's been rumored for next month, right? But the thing I
Hmm.
wanted to put out with Xbox, to go back into what we were saying, is that with
Right.
Xbox, they didn't show gameplay per se,
Yeah.
unless it was something that's already been established and whatnot. I had the expectation that Xbox was going to give me updates to all the games they showcased last year, which we still don't have an answer to.
Yeah.
If you really know, I mean, other than Halo Infinite, we don't really have an answer to the State of Decay 3. Like, what about that game? You title card that last year. Like, where is that this year? Um, but now here comes my real concern. So Game Pass, right? And on Twitter, it's been on the rave. Every like a big influencer has been toting the Game Pass thing as a meme to piss off people who hate Game Pass or whatever. But
Hmm.
let's be honest, right? At $10 a pop, it's a pretty fair deal, right? You're getting like 100 games curated to you at all times, including Xbox exclusives and all stuff. But now am I wary, right? So I've always been skeptical about it. I love Game Pass. I've tried it out. Playing Gears on PC, solid. Like I got a chance to play Gears again without an Xbox because of Game Pass.
Hmm.
But the concern is Xbox hasn't showed gameplay for anything. But do they have to? Is my concern. Because if you think about it, showcases are made to sell a product. They're no longer in the game to sell you these games. They're just telling you it's coming to Game Pass, and if you're there, you just try it out. You don't like it, you leave. And that's the Netflix thing, right? If you look at Netflix, they don't they don't like go out and advertise their new shows. They just say boom, here's like 10 new shows, go binge, and that's it. So I
I
mean,
hadn't considered that point at all. That's very interesting because now they're not gunning for you to spend, $60, $70, whatever the price is on, whatever single product they're selling you, right? They're trying to get
exactly.
you to get into the ecosystem. They're trying to get you to, have this recurring purchase of $10, $15 a month, whichever Game Pass you end up picking. So on some level, they don't need to go terribly in depth into any one thing because if you're already getting into Game Pass, then I mean you can just try it, right? This thing's available on the service, go for it.
It's a freaking dollar.
Um, yeah,
Freaking
well,
dollar.
that's the thing. Well, if you play your cards right, like I mean, my Game Pass expired recently, and they're still running that promotion where they'll convert your gold 1-to-1 if you don't have Game Pass already to Game Pass Ultimate. So I bought 3 years of Xbox Live Gold and then did the 3 months for $1 Game Pass thing, and now I have Game Pass through August of 2024. For basically the price of 1 year of Game Pass, which last time I checked is still active. So I mean, if you want to get Game Pass, anyone who's out there listening, that might be the best way to do it, or at least the cheapest way to do it, if you can find
Yeah,
if you can
no,
find gold.
the problem is I still don't know what Microsoft's game is, right? Because the idea of a subscription service is you make profit off it, right? But I've seen people with like crazy stories, and this is anecdotal through Reddit. For as much as Reddit can be considered a trustworthy source of people
Hey,
saying like,
I got that deal off of Reddit, so it
oh, well,
worked.
there you go, right? So look,
Yeah.
I mean, there's people that are like, oh yeah, I spent like $1 on like per month, and I got like 3 years for like $1 a month, pretty much. I only paid like $36 or something like that. I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, what game are they playing? Like, you're already at a loss at $15 a pop. You're expecting to make up the profit by getting, hundreds of people, or like hundreds of thousands of people into this. And now, people are just eating up your stuff for $1. Like, what is the game plan? And honestly, I mean, that's the thing, right? So it's like they don't even they're just trying to get in the ecosystem, which we've established this. And at one point or another, you're gonna get stuck unless you infinitely create new accounts and you're smart and you stay on top of the ball. You're at one point or another, they're gonna hit you with that $15 thing, and then every month for the rest of your life, you're pretty much just $15 a pop, and they're gonna be feeding themselves happily with this money. But regarding the thing again, going back to the not having to advertise, right? My biggest worry is that they don't need to entice you anymore. I think is the best word, in the way that Sony does with like graphics, right? Because like
Hmm.
Sony always tries to tell you, the biggest thing, our biggest goal is to make the best possible cinematic looking game, and that's our niche, right? And that's fine. Every company has their niche, right? But they need to showcase that to you in a presentation, show you this is what
Yeah.
PS5 is about. They need to sell you the console, what the console can do, and all that stuff. Xbox says, we're the most powerful thing, and yeah, you could say Halo Infinite is that game for them, despite people saying this doesn't seem like it, and in many cases the PS5 has maintained a similar on par performance anyways. So what is Xbox trying to sell? And the honest answer is just Game Pass, right? They don't need to show you the game anymore. And I think personally, what I was excited about and what I was demanding from Xbox is that because they have the money to go toe to toe with Sony, to push the industry forward by elevating the standard for graphics, gameplay, game design, publishing, and of course polishing, right? Because you don't want glitches in your game either. But the honest answer is, it's like they don't have to. Why?
Yeah.
Why bother playing that game? Why bother taking that bet when I can just put my game on Game Pass, not have it look as good as Sony, and people are still going to buy into it because of it? So that also worries me, on top of the fact that if you really look at it, you can have a genuine, awesome indie experience and not have to pay as much as like God of War or something, right? So what
Hmm.
is the worth of AAA from Sony? And that's something that why Michael and I had that debate that last week, because it's like, what is the point of having high-end graphics if your game is just going to be as good as an indie game? Or what's the point of having all this if Hades, made with like, colored like cartoon graphics, is on par game of the year wise with The Last of Us 2? So
Yeah.
this is the thing that all comes in with Game Pass, because it's like, why am I? It shows the gamers, why am I wasting my money on Last of Us Part Two at $70 a pop, or $60, whatever, or Last of Us Part 3 if it comes out, or God of War
Hmm.
Ragnarok, when I could just go to Game Pass and have equal experiences and fun, and the graphics aren't going to mean crap to me if the gameplay is not fun. You know?
Well, I think that's exactly the question that Microsoft wants people to be considering, right? When they're deciding whether they want to buy an Xbox or whether they want to buy a PlayStation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to understand they were lagging behind in third place ostensibly for the entirety of the last generation, right? And in doing so, they had to get desperate, right? They had that. Well, not they had to get desperate. They were desperate, and they had to gun for the fences. They throw a bunch of money into backwards compatibility, which is one thing that Sony wasn't doing at all, and they decided to lead the charge on that. They're acquiring studios in order to compete with Sony's first party, which is right. So they're building this portfolio, they're building this infrastructure, and it ultimately culminates into this one service that because Xbox has the backing from Microsoft, right, which has so many other services that they offer, whether it be Windows or mobile or whatever, all these other stuff, Azure and all that stuff. They have a significant difference in capital than Sony has access to, right? Mm-hmm. So they can fight this fight on a completely different front, where instead of having to compete, okay, so instead of 5 years ago, the question may have been, okay, so we're going to spend $50 million on marketing for Gears 5, right? And that's going to go up against Uncharted 4, right? I know they didn't come out at the same time, but whatever.
You're just giving.
So, we have to try to convince someone that may be considering, a PS4 this holiday, with their, they got their Christmas bonus and, it's Black Friday and all this stuff. So we got to try to get them to want this Xbox over Uncharted and the PS4. So they have to spend tens of millions of dollars. They have to try to, position the game in such a way that's going to make it look better than Uncharted in all these different ways. Or now, what they can do is that they can spend the same amount of money, or potentially even more, right? I mean, who knows what checks they're cutting to these developers to get their games on Game Pass? But they can just take that marketing budget, they can give it to these studios. They can say, "Hey, look, put your game on our service for X amount of time." Which PlayStation was doing to some degree with PS Plus, right? When they give away games every month, right?
Yeah,
it's the same thing where they pay them a certain amount of money to put the game on the service. They take that marketing budget, they put it there, and Sony has no reasonable way to compete with that, right? Because you're paying Microsoft $15 a month in order to play Halo and Proteus and Need for Speed and Star Wars and all of these different games,
right?
Versus what are you going to get for $15 a month at Sony, right? Like maybe PS Now, right? Well, which I mean, on some level, like yes, you do have access to a certain amount of those games, right? But the core of that service is streaming, right? It's not the same value proposition that Xbox has. So I just don't see.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I'm sorry to cut in, but it's just I see where you're going with this. I mean, I don't want to get into debate as to like which service is better, because obviously it's all based off of like what person likes which games, right? I mean, like if I had to go off of like a value proposition, like the benefit of Game Pass is that it's day one on release, the newest games. Here you go, max possible fidelity. It's for next gen or whatever. PS Now is still stuck on PS4, right? I don't know if you knew that, but they still haven't released a single PS5 game on the service. But if I had to compare both, right, regarding Xbox game studios, I prefer the PlayStation Studio stuff, and PlayStation. On top of the fact that a good majority of PlayStation's old studios, like their old games, are on the service, like PS Now and stuff, compared to Game Pass, which is like 200 games. I don't know if it'll tell me here how many games they have here. No, it's not gonna. Well, they always promote it as like we got like 100 plus games, right? Or 200 or 300 games. Yeah, look, see, play over 100 games. That's how they promote it. 100 as our minimum. When you look at PS Now, you're getting promoted 800 games. And unlike Game Pass, which is you have the option to either pay $10 or $15, PS Now only has $10 no matter what. Right? So that decision there is on the person. Now, granted, a lot of these games you have to stream them, and you're right, that kind of sucks. You obviously want to download your games to play them at the best possible fidelity. If you have crap internet, PS Now isn't going to work for you. Um, but regardless of that, the whole thing of like they don't have to sell you a game anymore is the biggest thing, right? Because and even then you could see what you were saying. You see how like you were comparing, oh, Sony does PS Plus and they give you free games and this and that. Look at the games that they gave you away for PS Plus in the past 6 months. They gave you Final Fantasy freaking 7 remake for free,
Yeah.
Control free, and I don't know how many other great games, but there was a bunch of great indie games. Subnautica was one of them at one point. Abzu, all that stuff, right? You look at Xbox, and I don't recall anything, but I know that they weren't impactful, and I know that people were complaining about the fact that Xbox Gold, like the free games for Gold, were not like big titles or AAA or whatever, and it's because they're just spending all the money on Game Pass. They just guys like they want you to pay for that service. They don't want you to own the game. They want you to rent it and pay for the service. And the honest answer is it really benefits a lot of people because there's people out there that like you buy a game and you put it away after 20 hours, so what's the point of buying it? Might as well rent it, play the 20 hours, and not have to pay full price for the game. And that completely changes the whole value proposition of gaming in the industry beyond anything we ever seen. Like it literally just revived Gamefly, and Gamefly was literally dying, and it just came back because people don't want
Mm-hmm.
Game Pass, they want Gamefly now. They like, I don't know why Gamefly is coming up, but people are like, well, I don't want to deal with Microsoft's like Microsoft corporate stuff. I want to go to Gamefly. So Gamefly is coming back out of nowhere. I'm seeing like a bunch of ads everywhere on Instagram and all that stuff. Like it's trying to make a massive comeback. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things to be said. Now, regarding the value proposition, again, this is how nasty Xbox is playing the game. You go to hold on, let me see here real quick. Xbox Game Pass. I gotta look it up. Give me 1 second. Xbox.
I had no idea there were 800 games on
Yeah,
PS Now.
it's
That seems
absurd.
absurd.
It does, right? But it is. There's 800 games because there's a lot of games there from the PS1, PS2, or I don't know if PS1, but I know from PS3, the PS4, and the PS2. There's a bunch of games there that you can just access at all times.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
And
trying to see.
it's $10 a month,
Yeah,
and you have access to that entire 800
at any
800 game
time
library.
on PC or on PlayStation, and it's because it's stream. It doesn't matter what your setup is. It's just you go. You know.
That's insane.
All right. But now check out how nasty Xbox is playing this game. I was talking about it with
Mm-hmm.
Michael earlier today. So right now you can get a Series X for $34.99 a month with Game Pass. No upfront fees. You don't have to pay the $500 upfront. You don't have to pay Game
Mm-hmm.
Pass upfront. It's just you go to Best Buy, you order a Series X, you pay $35 for the month, and then for the next 2 years you pretty much just pay $35.
Yeah.
And within 2 years, yeah, you'll pay the full $800. But guess what? For $35 a month, you're getting 100 games in the access at all times, minimum. That's a
Mm-hmm.
nasty game to play because if you really think about it, a new game is $70 now. So for half of that, you're getting access to over 100 games with a new console at no extra cost, other than you just paying it off over time. That's a pretty nasty way to play the business because now you're telling people that essentially you don't even have to buy the console at full price anymore. You just pay it off over time whenever you feel like it. And the $34.99 gets eaten up by the fact that all the games you're playing cost that much more.
Well, is it that you're paying off the console over time, or is
Yeah.
it that you're just leasing the console like a phone? Because as far as I've understood how the all access thing works, and I could be wrong about this, but it's that you're paying $35 a month, but it's like a phone where at the end of the contract, it's like you have, like, I don't know if you have to upgrade or something like that. But is it that you're just paying it down over time, or is it you're paying for access to the item?
I'm trying to read here on Best Buy if it says anything. Let me
Now that I
see.
think about it, it's probably paying it down because they'd have to like send a guy over to your house. Phil Spencer'd have to go over to your house to break your legs if you stop paying,
No,
so
I
they
mean
take the
no.
Xbox
That's
back.
that crap's easy, man. If they do that stuff, what'll happen is they'll just you're on a credit card, right? So you'll just keep paying forever. Otherwise, you risk your credit score going up to the sky. And then on top of that, they it's an online service, so they'll just break your console. It's Microsoft. They're not dumb. They'll probably just like,
No,
hey,
sure.
we won't break your legs. We'll break your Xbox's legs. That's how I think what it is you're pretty much just paying off the console, right? Because they're giving you the
Hmm.
full box and you get to keep it essentially. And then as long as you're paying the subscription, I mean, it wouldn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what you're there for. You're there for the subscription if you
Yeah,
buy
well,
that shit.
that's the main point, right? And it's a larger trend that I'm seeing, not just in video games, but in stuff like the right to repair laws that are having trouble getting passed across the country, and all these other services, whether it's your fridge or your washing machine and stuff like that, where you're not necessarily going to own the stuff anymore, right? Whether that be the games or the console themselves, right? Like it's it's seemingly, and I don't know what the math is behind this because it doesn't on the surface, it seems like it doesn't make sense, but clearly they've made these calculations at Microsoft that it makes more sense for them to have this recurring revenue. But it makes more sense for them to have you consistently paying them at a smaller clip than maybe paying, instead of buying maybe 2 games a year at $60 each, right? For $120, it makes more sense for them to split that up, $15 every month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe what they're finding is that the average Xbox player or something like that only buys those 2 games, right? So, they wouldn't be making ostensibly they wouldn't be making any more than they normally would if they went the route that they're going right now with Game Pass. But the other hand of that is that they actually don't necessarily lose anything. Or not necessarily lose anything because they're probably losing money right now anyway. But they're not necessarily losing on sales, if that makes sense. Like, what's the best?
No,
way to put
I
it?
know
Like,
what you're saying, because the thing is, and I used to sell subscriptions in my old job too, at Office Depot, and even when I worked at Best Buy at one point, I sold their subscriptions too, right? And the whole thing is basically they'll the training, no matter how much they'll teach you that, yeah, it's the greatest service. The one finite detail that is always there is the one thing they tell you. The hopes is people will buy this and they will
and
forget
forget that they're paying for it.
exactly,
Yeah.
and that's it. Like, the hopes is that they'll just continue renewing forever and ever and ever. And honestly, I mean, I understand business wise how it makes money, because, like I said, I always like to see the other side of the coin, right? I always like to see like what people think. And for a corporation, it makes sense, right? If you're always paying $15, they don't care whether you buy the $30 product or the $100 product, as long as you're always paying $15 or whatever it is, right? But I also see it from the consumer side. It's like, if you're really not careful with it, you're forgetful, you're risking, you could potentially use something that's super valuable to you and completely risk your bank account at the same time. Because if you know how to play your cards right, you could jump into Xbox Game Pass, play all of their games back to back for 5 months straight, and jump out before you hit the $90 hit, like, like ceiling, right? You'll
Sure.
probably, by that point, you'll be at $60. You've played all their games and you jump out. Now, if you want to stay for the new games, I mean, sure, obviously, but you have the, like, I want people to remember that you can always jump out whenever you want. Like, it's not like you're in a contract and they're holding your, like, console hostage. I mean, I don't know about this
Yeah.
specific deal, but if you buy it like full price, you're not
Mhm.
like, they're not choking you for this stuff. You have the freedom to decide that their job is always, as a corporation, you can see them as evil for what it is, but a corporation's job is always, one, to make money, and two, to make the business float for themselves, for the employees, and obviously to enrich themselves.
Mhm.
So they're always going to try and find the best way to make you interested in buying their product, and Game Pass is just another one of those programs. But you are not locked into this. And this is the argument I was having with Michael's, like, you're not locked in. You decide whether you want to jump in or jump out. It's your decision whether you want to let yourself succumb to these people or not, right? Because at the end of the day, and I agree with Michael, corporations are not your friend. But I don't think they're evil. I think they're just, well, some of them could be, but I think that they are platonic. It's supposed to be a platonic relationship where it's just, you give me good product, I give you money. That's it. My relationship ends with that. If you give me bad product, I leave. And that's about it, right? If Sony tomorrow starts making like God of War Ragnarok sucks, and Last of Us Part 3 comes out a glitch mess, and I'll be like, thanks, I'll just take my wallet and go to Nintendo or something else, or I'm just gonna go to
Yeah.
PC. Like, what's the point? They have to fight every day to prove that their console or their games are worth it. So, and that's the joy of it, right? Because, I mean, everybody says PC is great, and I agree with that. PC is literally the definitive experience. Now, my experience with consoles is as simple as this: do you what do you find more thrilling, filling up a bathtub of water, or filling up balloons of water and seeing how far you can take before they pop? That's the fun of it for me with consoles, is seeing how far I can make this box go. You know, how much spaghetti can I fit in it? Because I know my
Mm-hmm.
bathtub is gonna be, you know, infinitesimally bigger. There's no fun in that. But there's fun in a balloon popping. There's a fun in me throwing that balloon at people. You know, which is I guess where console wars comes from. I'm not saying I'm advocating for it, but you know where this analogy is going. You know what I'm saying. It's more
No,
fun.
sure. It's
It's
just an
more fun.
it's an interesting metaphor.
Yeah, I'm just saying. It's just more interesting to see. You know, that's the fun of it, right? There's no fun in like watching Superman fly across the galaxy, or there's fun in
Mm,
watching him do it if he's carrying kryptonite, right? Because you know we already know he's godlike, but where's the fun in that? Like you're okay, we know you're like infinite. Like show us something that you
sure,
could
yeah.
do if you were
Where's
in a situation.
where's the conflict? You know,
Where's the
where's
stakes? Which is what
the
Martin Scorsese
stakes?
says. Where's the stakes in
Yeah,
this? And I
yeah.
apply that honestly. I believe it now more than ever. Although I still disagree about the Marvel movies, I see it about everything else, right? To some extent, some of the movies he's right on that too. But the point is, it's like I see the thing. It's like where's the stakes? That's the thrill of it. Where's the challenge? Where's the competition? I'm not saying again that yeah, exclusivity is the best thing in the world. I mean, you know, it hurts consumers in one end and it benefits them in another, right? Because there's a larger conversation to be had with that. But the point is, Microsoft is playing this game, and that's what worried me about their E3. Now, to be said, despite the fact that everything were title cards to go back to E3, I was actually genuinely interested in what they showed. I know you spoke out to me about that one game where it's like the family, it's like an indie game where it's
Somerville.
like Somerville, right? Where it's like an indie family, like they're there, they're watching TV, it's all like horrified and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden like aliens come in, right? That's
Mm.
freaking interesting. The new game that just came out, I forget what it was called. It's the top down shooter. Let me go back to Xbox Game Pass. I forget what it's called. The Ascent. There you go. The Ascent. You know, you look
Okay.
at the Ascent, and let me look up some gameplay. That game, you know, it's interesting. It's not God of War, right? But you know, it's interesting. I'm gonna pull up some gameplay. So there's a lot of things here that I think Xbox is doing, which I find to be interesting. Now, sure, they didn't show gameplay, but there's still something to be excited about, right? So, what do you think is that's turning off people? Is it just the fact that there's no gameplay? Is it the fact that everything's going to Game Pass? Is it the fact that all these games look indie? Like, what's turning off people? You know?
I mean that's the thing is that like all three of those scenarios you mentioned are probably contributing factors, right? I don't think there's any one single thing that's really creating whatever the response is that you're seeing from people online. Um, I also don't I mean again, right, I'm not really on Twitter, right, so I don't
Right.
necessarily see like all of the beefs that people have with certain stuff, and I don't necessarily understand like why there's such a vehement negativity toward Game Pass. I mean
Whoa! Look, I'm sorry to cut you off, but just real quick. Like, for example, I've had this conversation with Michael, and he tells me every year E3 sucks. I'm
Mhm.
like, but why? And then, you know, he's like, well, I want the exciting moment of when Sephiroth was revealed. I'm like, well, yeah, I understand that that's great. But if you're only going to be excited about established things and you're not going to let yourself be excited about the new, then what's the point? E3 sucks, of course, right? And it's a
Well,
conversation I had with you at the beginning.
hype is an interesting beast, right? Because it's kind of hard to. I feel that it's kind of unreasonable to expect someone to have the same kind of reaction that they would have if a franchise from their childhood that's been dormant for 15 years came back. Have that same kind of reaction for Kenna Bridge of Spirits, right?
Exactly.
Like Kenna looks, it graphically, it's an looks great.
Hmm.
From a gameplay perspective, it looks interesting. There's a lot of good things going for it, but again, to have that kind of like excitement level over something, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're familiar with the team that's behind it, right? Like maybe they worked on stuff that you understand before, or maybe it's a new team comprised of a bunch of people from a bunch of different studios that you enjoyed before. Like Dishonored, the first Dishonored that came out was a great example of that, where they had this like all-star team of people from that worked on Half-Life, that worked on BioShock, that worked on a bunch of different games across the industry, right? So there it kind of makes sense that okay, I'm interested in what this thing could potentially be, but until you have the controller in your hands and the game in your console,
Hmm.
it's only potential, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, right, what's getting Mike excited is something that he already knows, something that he's familiar with. So I mean, yeah, I kind of understand why, you're not going to get excited over stuff that,
That hasn't been
you've never
established.
heard
No,
about before,
of
right?
course. I understand that. And with that I agree. There's no doubt, because that's my theory, and I mean there's truth to it, right? There's people that only, and Mike, I'm not saying that Mike doesn't get excited about new things, but I have noticed that over the years he's become more and more on the fence of things, especially because of situations, again, not to hark on, the old beaten horse, but Cyberpunk, right? He jumped into
Mhm.
that expecting it to be, the end all be all of gaming, and the first thing he got was a giant flop, glitched mess that like drove his PS4 to the ground.
Mm.
And then of course, like the refund scandal with like Sony and not getting it until Sony finally approved it. But I understand where that perspective is, right? But for example, it's like I always try to keep an open mind, because again, it's like, so you brought up the Kenna Bridge of Spirits, right? And we can bring in Ratchet for comparison. These two games, yeah, sure, you can not be excited about them. You can say, oh, Ratchet's just the same crap as always, and Kenna just looks like a kid's game. But really think about it. Kenna proves that Pixar quality can reach gaming. For the first time in the world, we're finally going to get true Pixar quality gaming as a video game. Like, we're going to get
Mhm.
Pixar as a video game. And that to me is exciting, because that means that it's going to open up a whole slew of like opportunities for games in the vein of Pixar to come to console, which
Yeah.
we've tilted towards a hyper realistic, angle, and indie has shown us that hyper realism isn't that important. Like, there's different ways to have fun, and now we're finally gonna get, Pixar, which is like the other one, right? And Ratchet did the same thing. Ratchet in itself is not just the fact that, oh yeah, it's just the same game as always. It's the fact that it's an old game system or old game style with like collectibles and this and that modernized, proving that games like Sly Cooper, Jack and Daxter, and all these other games like Michael's Maximo still have a place in the hearts of gamers today, even if it's a $4 or $5 million, 4 or 5 million copies sold type of project. There's
Mhm.
still a place for it in this market. The only problem is, are you going to, jump into it wholeheartedly or not? But going back to the thing, it's like, you're right. I mean, it's like you gotta find what you want to get out of it, right? Because if you're only coming in through it from one viewpoint, like say, like, oh, I just want to look at Call of Duty at E3, I understand you, and you're not going to find E3 exciting. If you're coming in, it's like, well, I only care about Legend of Zelda being, or Metroid being announced, and that's it. If you're coming in only for established franchises, I agree, E3 sucks. But the whole point of E3 is to see what's new, which is what you said. It's a showcase for everything. And, on the Indiescape at the PC Game Show and Future Game Show, I was amazed. I did not expect that many games. There was
Mhm.
so many different games, like so many indies. And if you go to the Steam page now, you can see all the demos and stuff. There was Severed Steel, which looks like Doom, and it's slow motion, and it has all this thing. There's another dude that's like, you know what? I want to make my own Max Payne, and I'm gonna use PS1 graphics. Like, screw it, I'm just gonna make my own Max Payne. So he did it, and it's coming. So there's a lot of things out there that are exciting. Now, regarding the AAA space, like, yeah, you could be upset that they didn't do any showcases. I mean, Sony's the only one that does it anymore. But Nintendo did showcases too, so there's still things to be excited about. I don't see the hatred. I don't see why anyone would say, "Oh, Metroid Dread sucks because it's 2D. It's not AAA graphics." Like, okay, and
Well, I think
you know,
on some level, those types, right, that are just gonna always find something
mm-hmm.
that's wrong with, it doesn't measure exactly up to whatever their standard is of whatever they need E3 to be. Like, on some level, it's just like, okay, dude, like keep playing Call of Duty, because if they're not willing to walk out of their comfort zone, then and they shouldn't have to, right? I mean, gaming is a hobby, right? You can engage with it in as much as you in as much as the way that you want, as you demand, right?
I'm gonna show. I'm
So,
sorry. I'm gonna show a picture because I know that Nintendo's gonna copyright me if I show their gameplay. So
oh
I'm
boy.
gonna show a picture.
um What also, I've
I can't.
never I mean, granted, like I said, I haven't been on Twitter, so I don't know what the reaction is, but as far as I've seen from like some of the YouTubers that I follow, and most of the people that are in a position to understand what something like Metroid Dread is, I haven't heard anything negative about Metroid Dread. And I mean, here's the thing, right? Metroid Dread, I mean, that's That's like 15 years, right, that we've been waiting to hear anything about that, right? I mean, that's like this game that was rumored, and it's sort of like it every so often it would come up again, and then it wouldn't come out that E3, and it's like, you know, I mean, first off, just going off of the fact that they're going 2D Metroid, right? Fantastic, at least for me. They come out, they say it's Metroid 5, so it's a direct sequel to Fusion. It's like, okay, that's even crazier, right? And then they drop, you know, the title, right? They drop this thing that has been this like urban legend for over a decade, right? I mean, that is the kind of hype moment that I think Mike is talking about when he's saying, you know, that's what he goes to E3 for, you know. But and here's something, you know, you can't have Sony 2015 every year, right? Like, you can't have The Last Guardian, you know, Shenmue 3 and Final Fantasy 7 remake, you know, back to back to back,
with God of
you know,
War
every year, right?
Yeah,
right. Because here's the problem: is that if you did have that every year, then all of a sudden now that's the standard, right? And after a certain amount of time, that's going to become boring, right? Where it's like, oh God, all they have are you know, like, you know, bombshells, right? Like, when are they going to have an indie game? When are they going to have this? When are they going to have that, right? Like, there's always something to complain about.
That's the complaint about right now, right?
But here's my point, right? Is that you need to have the EA plays and the Take-Twos and just the shittiest garbage, the kind of stuff where you're watching it and it's like, God, if I would pay thousands of dollars to have the 2 hours that I just wasted on the Verizon showcase, right? I would literally go work in a mine if it meant that I could have those 2 hours back. You know, you have to have that, because what those do is that they elevate the rest of the content of the other shows, right? They make the rest of they make the gems all the sweeter, right?
They made Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
So
exactly. Exactly. So, you know, look,
oh my God.
E3 is as much about hype as it is about, you know, Konami E3 2010, you know, or those, you know, cringy moments, you know, Ridge Racer, right? Like, it's always been a shit show, right? But that's part of the charm of the event to some degree.
Yeah.
Now, there have been some years that are worse than others, and like I said, I avoid most of the shows because I know most of them don't have the entertainment value that I want out of an E3 showcase, right? Which is why I don't watch stuff like EA or Take-Two or any of that stuff. But you know, it can't be, you know, 100% hype mode all day every day, right? It just,
Yeah,
I don't know. It would be, that's unrealistic to expect.
No, I know it's totally understandable. I mean, maybe that's just because I try to be hyped about new things and not necessarily old things. I mean, not saying that I don't, right? Because when I saw God of War coming back, you know, I blew up in that day. I think there was some
sure, me too. When he walks out of the shadows and it's Kratos with a beard, I was like, oh shit,
no,
you know. I mean, that was wild. You know?
Exactly.
That was wild.
That's where like the Dad of War meme came from, you know. And,
yeah.
I 100% agree. You know, when Final Fantasy the 7 was shown and everyone went nuts, you know, there's moments for that too, right? But I also feel like there's moments that we have to decide, you know, okay, it's time to see something new, right? Because I mean, as much as I love, as you were saying, you know, I thought about it. If I had God of War every year, I'd be tired of it too, you know.
Right.
If I had, like, just like I did with COD, I loved COD at one point and then I got tired of it. It's the same crap every year. It's just, you know, run forward shooter. And yeah, sure, you can say strategy this and that, but the strategies, other than some perks and the way they change it to try and balance it, it's essentially the same things you were doing before.
But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you appreciate the medium in a completely different way than a lot of people do, right? I feel like the kinds of gamers that you, me, and Mike are, right, where we're willing to try different things and we'll play, you know, a game from 15 years ago one week, and then we'll play this indie game the next, and then we'll play the big AAA game, you know, that fall or whatever it is. You know, we want to see everything the medium has to offer, whereas a majority of, and I mean, here's the thing, I don't have a number, right? I can't put a number on this, but you know, it would seem to me that the heavy hitters, right, for the games industry, Call of Duty, Madden, you know, FIFA, all of these games, the primary target audiences for those games typically only play those games, right? In the same way that, a lot of people that will be at the theater on day one to watch the next Marvel movie, right? They're not going to go see, Bong Joon-ho's next, Korean thriller, right? At an art house, generally, right? Occasionally you get some crossover, right? But those kinds of people are not necessarily going to be going for the art house type films, just like the kinds of gamers that are into Call of Duty every year, or they only play Destiny, or they only play Apex Legends, or whatever, aren't necessarily going to want to try to play whatever Hades, right? I lost my train of thought with that point.
Since you were talking about, since you were talking about that Korean filmmaker, I brought up Sifu real quick. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There you go. No, I fuck, man. I lost my train of thought. What was the point
I get. Okay, well, look, I'll try and recap you real quick. So essentially, I understand where you're coming from regarding like the idea of like gamers that play those type of games are generally just locked into that. Like they basically we've kind of established this, right? So like a person who plays COD or FIFA, they're generally only gonna play COD or FIFA, right? They're not gonna decide tomorrow, hey, you know what, let me try PSVR or something like that, or let me try something crazy. And then there's people like us that, we try to keep an open mind. I mean, I personally, I know I get facetious and or maybe like overzealous is the better word for it when I like get excited about something like God of War that speaks to my heart, because I've been so connected to it in the beginning, in the same way that people can speak to Breath of the Wild because they've been connected with Zelda since the beginning of time. And that's just the truth, right? These franchises have already established themselves. But I also find it for myself that it would be me living in ignorance to say that those are the definitive experiences when there's just so much out there in the world, right? And that's what kind of keeps me going. I've noticed that lately, like I've been analyzing myself like emotionally and stuff, and I find myself to be extremely what's the word? I find myself to be extremely like I want to gorge myself with all these gaming experiences, because just the thought about like all these different indies and all these games I have to play through and all this stuff and all these trophies I want to collect, because I'm also an avid trophy hunter / super addicted to that. But the thing is, like, just the thought of it, just like it blows my mind sometimes. Sometimes it exhausts me, and sometimes it just blows my mind, because it's like right now I just finished platinuming Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and Ratchet and Clank 3 all at the same time. Like I did both of them last night. I finished them both last night.
Nice.
And I'm thinking about it. It's like I have so much to play. I want to try out Murder the Soul Suspect, which I skipped out on because everyone said it was crap. And at the same time, I also bought Oddworld 1 and I have Oddworld 2 Soulstorm because of PS Plus. So now it's like I have to play all that. But before I know it, I still have to go back to Control. They just re-released Jedi Fallen Order for PS5, so it's like, oh, $40. I kind of want that too. And then, I'm looking, and then people are already like, which we're going to get into now, it's like people are already like, oh, there's a new standalone Ghost of Tsushima game. It's called Ghost of Ikishima. And I'm just like, what the is going on? There's so much crap releasing, and it's like I'm so far behind. I'm still on the PS3 era trying to catch up with my backlog. So it's like I wish I could get people to see it my way and just be like, dude, just try something new. Like, even if it's just one game, I don't care if you try one new game a year, just try something different. Because you're literally only preventing yourself from having more fun by sticking to one experience or one genre. There's so much out there. And even if you don't like Final Fantasy VII Remake, I don't know, you might like Dragon Quest, you might like Dragon Age, you might like Mass Effect Trilogy, which just got remastered. Another game I have to get into again. They just remastered that entire trilogy. And there's rumors that Dead Space is coming back. Like, why don't you try playing, survival horror? Maybe you like that, But I think that pretty much says it for E3. I mean, the hype is just there. People just don't see it. They only see what they want to see, right? I think that's the best or most fair way to put it.
Yeah, no, I mean that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
It's just the truth, man. There's just too much out there to really say one experience is the definitive, and I also believe in the one man's trash, another man's treasure, right? There's a reason why one person likes something and the other person doesn't.
Sure.
So anyways.
Although, you know what, you did bring this up a little bit earlier. If there is any one part of E3 as in totality that I was kind of disappointed with, not a whole lot VR that I saw that was particularly interesting or anything like that. I would have liked to have seen some more games, maybe some older titles get some VR updates or something like that. But it is what it is. You know what's funny about VR is that I find that the the mod community is doing a lot more to support these headsets than the studios. You know, I downloaded a mod recently for Red Dead Redemption 2 that lets you play the whole thing in VR.
Oof,
it's
crazy.
Insane. It's insane how well it works. Like, you kind of have to lower the graphics to the point where it's like you're looking at like a Super Nintendo game, but you know, in order to get it at a frame rate that you won't vomit at. But aside from that, the fact that it even works at all, right? The fact that you can like look a person in the eye when you're talking to them, and that's crazy. That's crazy. I wish there was a little bit more support there.
You're just like, we're 2 steps away from Westworld. We're almost there.
We're almost there. Just a little bit
We're
further.
Almost there. I can almost experience the Western world for what it was. Man. I mean, honestly, I can't really say much about VR because obviously I'm not as big of a connoisseur in it as you are yet. I didn't buy any of like the Oculus Rift or anything like that. And it seems to me like it's still not there, right? Like VR is awesome, it's coming, but it's still not at its full realized potential. Like it's still going through that PS1, PS2 metamorphosis where it's like metamorphosis or whatever, where it's
everyone's figuring out the rules right now.
Yeah. And I mean, and the fact that the thing that miffed me about it is that aside from Facebook and Valve, the only other company that's pushing it, like big name company, is Sony with the PSVR, right? Xbox didn't jump in, or maybe they're testing it, but they didn't jump in. And Nintendo, you know, they did the VR Amiibo
Labo, yeah,
the Labo, and then they gave up with that. You know, so that's kind of interesting to how they just kind of, you know, everyone else just kind of let it fly over, and they're like, we're not ready to jump into that gimmick yet. I mean, who knows? I think that with PSVR 2, Sony's gonna pull out some type of exclusive that's gonna show what VR is all about, and then it'll get everybody excited again.
Well, there's a rumor that they're doing a Horizon game in VR. That there's a studio that they have that they're working on Horizon. I don't know if that's true. I don't even know if I'd want that, to be perfectly honest with you. But you know, I'm very excited to see what they do with the second headset. You know, I worry that it's going to be wired, which is only going to like kind of, it's only going to perpetuate the same problem that I've had with all the headsets I have right now, is that it's just a cacophony of wires and setup. Like what's really going to determine whether or not VR is going to stick around or not is when they can lower the barrier to entry, when there's as minimal friction as possible to enter the virtual world from the real one. That's when it's going to be able to be adopted on a wider scale, because you know a lot of people that I know that are into VR, they're into it because of the Oculus Quest, because all you have to do with that thing is put it on your head and you're in. That's it. It's super simple. Now, granted, processing is not on board, right? So the amount of experiences that you have access to is fairly limited. But again, it's easier to get into, right? So I have friends at work that are like, "Oh, dude, I played Superhot at a friend's house. I had to buy one immediately," you know. But I told him, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's fun the first time you try it. But he's like, hey, but is it one of those things that gets old kind of fast? And I'm like, dude, everyone, including myself, that I've ever talked to that owns one of those headsets, they played it for 3 months and then it's just sitting, it's just collecting dust.
Yeah.
You know, because it still requires a lot to actually get into it. You have to clear the space. You have to plug in all these wires. You have to do this. You have to do that.
Yeah,
so,
no, I mean, honestly, like, not to cut you off, but it's like, honestly, I thought about VR, and it's like, the only way I see VR being a possibility in my house is that I have my own house. I have a whole room set up exactly just for VR. And it's going to be like, it's literally going to be my holodeck. You know, it's going to be my Star Trek holodeck where I can just jump into another world and be done with it.
Yeah, but by the time you get to that stage, it's going to be so much more advanced that it'll be, I think the value proposition will be significantly higher. Plus, you'll have a back catalog of games that all the beta testers like myself have been, you know, playing and, you know, investing in. Right. Well, I mean, on some level,
doing all the legwork.
Well, seriously, but you know, that's the thing, right? Is that, you know, it's the people that buy the first generation hardware that are laying the groundwork for, you know, the people that are going to be able to play it later. Because if no one bought the PSVR, then you're not going to get a second one. You know,
of course.
Like I bought one because I wanted, you know, VR represented the closest thing to the Wild West in terms of game design that you could have access to. Now, in retrospect, would I have paid $500 for it? I don't know. Every time someone asks me, you know, oh, should I get one? I'm like, not for $500. No, it's not. No, don't do it. Do not do it. 300? That's a better price point. You know, that I think that's a more reasonable price point. Especially with all the games that Sony has on there. I mean, that's the thing, is that their headset still has access to the most compelling software on the market, right? You can play a majority of the games that are great on PC: Beat Saber, Super Hot, Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, Moss, Rez, Tetris. You have all of these fantastic games, and then you have access to Sony's first party, Blood and Truth, Wipeout, Astrobot, which is arguably the best VR game that I've ever played. All of these, Resident Evil 7. Oh my God, Resident Evil 7, dude. Not for everybody. Not for everybody, but
it's a thrilling experience.
Right. I mean, the most immersed I've ever been in a game. Period. Like,
That's
full stop.
I honestly think that what you played with Resident Evil 7 is the next generation of haunted house party, or like haunted house like themes and all.
Yes, dude.
They're not even gonna build out the park anymore. They're just gonna be like, here's a VR.
No, of course not. You put on the goggles. They'll put up some plywood walls so you can smack into them or whatever. But everything will be done digitally, and it'll be just as compelling, right? Because, by the way, not only are you not going to have to, you can see the wires or whatever, or you can tell that it's just a guy in a mask. Like Halloween Horror Nights is great. They do the fantastic job over there, but you can do so many more things inside of the virtual world that you could just never be able to do at a venue like Halloween Horror Nights.
You could actually trick somebody into thinking they're falling, for example. So I mean,
right. You could literally have the floor fall out from under somebody. It's amazing.
I'm
it's
not
amazing.
Go for any of that because I crap my pants and all that stuff. But the point is,
that's the fun part.
Yeah, but I don't care. It's like I like my heart intact.
Whatever.
I remember this one time I went to Universal and my wife was telling me like, hey, be careful with which ride you pick because some of these are pretty intense. And I'm like, well, this is just a water park, whatever. So I started climbing up the little volcano bay thing. Like I started climbing up to the top of the volcano. And she's like, are you sure you're okay with this ride? I'm like, yeah, it's that small, slide, right? It's like, no, we're still going higher.
No.
I'm like, okay, well, is it the second one at least? She's like, nope, we're going to the highest one. And I got to the top. I was like, well, I'm not going back down. So I guess I'll stand here. And the guy just went like 3. And he waved at me, and I just dunked. Like he dunked me into the water, and like literally, I could swear my lungs on fire because I was literally like taking in all water through my nose. My heart's literally like coming out of my heart. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm never doing it again.
I'm never doing it again.
I was like, I'm glad
that was amazing. I'll never do it again.
I experienced near death. I'm fine with this.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
But no, yeah, I mean,
I hear that.
I personally think the fun of having PlayStation behind it compared to the other companies is the fact that they're willing to throw money into it.
Yeah.
And that's the thrill of exclusives to me. It goes back to the thing. It's like, do you want to see a tub or a pool fill up with water, or do you want to see a water balloon fill up with water and see how far you can take it? And that's the fun of it. I like to see these corporations just throw money at gimmicks for the sake of trying to make it float. But whatever. Moving on from that, let's talk a little bit about Sony now, because we've already established, Nintendo's, they did a pretty great show for the most part, even though we touched them lightly, and Xbox, whatever, people can say they disliked it, but for the most part, I mean, they have Game Pass, right? They don't have to show anything anymore. But
right
now with Sony, so Sony's been doing this new thing, right, ever since Second Son and Last of Us, where they grab a game. I mean, they didn't do it God of War, but it seems like they're starting to pick up on this again, where they grab a game that's like their big AAA. And then they'll start working on an expansion, but they'll turn it into a full mini game, right? So we saw this with Second Son, with First Light. Lost Legacy. It started with Last of Us, right? It started with Left Behind, with Ellie's little.
Well, no, if you want to take it even further back, it started with Festival of Blood, Infamous.
Yeah, that's true. Festival of Blood.
Yeah, so that goes back way further back.
Yeah. So,
and by the way, Left Behind only became a standalone
after.
I think well after it actually came out as DLC.
Yeah.
Like I think it was when it came to PS4 is when it actually became a standalone.
Well, it released in the same year, I think, of the remaster. So they sold it apart after.
No. So that came out in February of 2014. I remember that, and that was on PS3. And then the remaster came out in July.
Well, yeah, in the same year. That's what I said, no?
Right. Oh no, I thought you said the remaster came out before Left Behind.
No. I meant like.
Then I was mistaken.
Or if I said it, then I'm mistaken too. But what I was saying is like in the same year. So. They obviously, split it apart to sell it as a piece. But the point is that it brought up that point, right? That, we're going to get little side adventures while we wait for the bigger stuff. And that's totally fine, right? And that's the beauty of it, right? That's what I was telling you. These companies are now gearing up to have their big fat team and then their small team make, extra content on the side to keep us hold over until the next experience or whatever, the next chapter and whatever they're doing. Right. With that being said, there's rumors already about Ghost of Tsushima, a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, like an expansion sort of, in the same vein of First Light.
They need to slow down. I haven't even played the first one.
No, I know, me neither. And I'm looking right now. I'm looking at the prices, and I'm like, I'm waiting for the presentation because I know they'll probably do something like they did with Miles Morales. Well, they'll just grab, Spider-Man, remaster it, blah blah blah, PS5. Here you go, with Miles Morales.
Well,
Like
they
they
already
probably
did
like
that
the
for PS5 for Tsushima. I mean, it's already got a 60 frames mode and 4K and all that. So
Well, no, but what I mean, like remastering, I mean like fully adding RTX and all the extra bells and whistles, right? That's what they did with Spider-Man, where they redid the body capture of or like they added a whole new character for Peter, like they changed his whole like body
right,
and
yeah,
face and
they
everything.
changed the model.
Yeah,
I don't. I mean,
they
maybe
added
Sucker
the
Punch will do that, but
RTX.
I don't. I don't know. I feel. Granted, I know absolutely nothing about this, but my
Yeah.
guess is that since the engine already runs on PS4 and since there's already a huge user base on PS4, I imagine this Ikishima thing's going to come out on PS4 and PS5.
Oh no, of
I don't see
course.
that being PS5 exclusive.
Of course. What I was just referencing is how they did the Spider-Man, and then they did like an Ultimate Edition, right? Where they
Yeah.
bundled up
Okay.
both games. I'm not saying they'll like remaster it to the extent of Spider-Man, but I'm saying I
Oh,
expect a
like by
bundle.
okay, I understand what you're at.
I
Yeah.
expect a
Okay, I understand
bundle,
what you're saying now.
right? So with that being said, um, I expect that with Ghost of Ikishima, where like they'll probably bundle it up, or even if they sell it separate, I think this is gonna be a $50 product, so it's wonderful because it's cheaper, and who doesn't love cheap games, right? But with that being
50
said,
bucks is cheap. Well, I mean,
well,
if
compared to
we're adjusting
70,
for
right?
inflation, they've never been cheaper, but $50.
Oh yeah, no, $50 is pretty bad on inflation, right? But compared to $70, right? I mean, you
Sure,
can't
no,
complain.
compared to 70, yeah.
You can't complain. You're getting AAA at less than the price of a AAA game, right?
Eh, I don't
And
know. I'll
then,
wait.
well, of
I'll
course, I
wait till
mean,
it's 20.
yeah, I mean, I can understand your position with that. At this point, I kind of want to catch up, so I'll get all my crap as soon as I can. But the point is,
Yeah.
regardless of that point, is that this trend I'm starting to notice it, and with Insomniac saying that they have 4 projects going on, they have this big supposed rumored multiplayer project, and so does Sucker Punch, and so does everyone else supposedly.
Hmm.
One point I wanted to bring up aside from Ghost of Tsushima is that another game that I don't think people are really thinking about, which has obviously not been mentioned, is going to come from Insomniac as well next year, and it's going to be something Ratchet and Clank related. Whether it's a Rivet spin-off adventure or another minor spin-off, Ratchet and Clank game, there's something else on the thing. Why do I think this? Well, aside from the fact that they did it with Spider-Man, next year is 2022, and that means it's the 20th anniversary of Ratchet and Clank, which
Hmm.
people aren't talking about. And that's a big milestone. And you know what milestones means? It means either remasters, HD, remakes or whatever, or some form of standalone type of thing like Ghost of Ikishima.
Hmm.
You think I'm on the ball with this, or you think I'm crazy?
I mean, well, so look, if you're gonna develop, if you're gonna spend, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars developing, and all this content, right? In the case of Ratchet and Clank, then it makes sense for them to repurpose a lot of that content into a smaller experience in the same way that Miles Morales repurposes a lot of the work from the first Spider-Man. They, remixed some few things. Obviously they added new characters and story and all that. Not saying it's just a rehash or anything like that, but it makes sense that if you're going to build this infrastructure that you use as much of it as possible, right?
Right.
So I could totally see them doing another Ratchet and Clank. Now whether or not, I don't know, maybe. I could see it, as something small, but I don't. So they're working on 4 projects,
Yeah, one of them's a
right? So
multiplayer game.
we know Spider-Man 2 is one of them.
Yeah.
One of them's a multiplayer one.
Mm-hmm.
So that so okay.
One
So
of them
what does
is
that
supposedly
leave? Like a
that leaves 2. One of them is supposedly like a remaster slash Sunset Overdrive sequel. That's
Mhm.
rumored. And I think the 4th game is a Ratchet and Clank sequel, like standalone
Sure.
Miles Morales style
Yeah, no,
experience.
I could see something like that.
That or a
Yeah.
remaster of, or like a compilation of the future series, right? Because we got the HD collection of the first 3 games. For some reason, they left out the 4th one, which is I forget the name of it now. It starts with a D. Deadlocked. They left out Deadlocked for whatever reason. And then they have the future series, which is composed of Tools of Destruction, a crack in time, and Into the Nexus, right? Those 3 games. So I
Yeah.
think we'll see a compilation of that brought into HD for even if it's just PS Now. There has to be some form of celebration or announcement that they're gonna do regarding that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that alongside the Last of Us multiplayer reveal, that they will, the rumors are pointing towards it, but I think for a fact they're going to reveal some form of expansion to The Last of Us Part 2. I think,
Like single player?
yeah, something like in the same vein of Left Behind, Lost Legacy, that sort of stuff.
I don't. Hmm. Okay, so it makes sense for the same reason that you would make a smaller Ratchet and Clank game, right? Because you've built the infrastructure, you have the technology, you have all these assets, you can reuse them, and it'll make a you can make a new game for cheaper, right? I don't want it, and it's only because no, but look, I don't want it because I wish Naughty Dog would just
make something new,
do something else, like just like yes, we got Last of Us 2. And whatever your opinions are of Last of Us 2, it's fine. I have my opinions of it. Everyone has their opinions of it. It's fine. But like, that team is so talented and they have so much talent that they're sitting on. There's so many, possibilities that they could be that they could work on. I just wanted to see them do something different. I want to see them flex themselves in a different way. Tell a story in a different setting. Tell a story with new characters and just try to do something and not just be this thing where they're just sort of riding the coattails of the same franchise for, what, the last 10 years? Think about it. 2013 is when The Last of Us came out, right? Mm-hmm. So if this rumor of the remake that they pulled from this other Sony studio that they were like, by the time that thing comes out, it'll literally be the 10th anniversary of The Last of Us, right? Unless it comes out next year, it would ostensibly be the 10th anniversary of that game, which is hard to believe that game's almost 10 years old at this point. But I don't know. I don't want to say I'm sick of Ellie and Joel and that era and that style of game and all that, but like, I've had my fill. And I just want to see them flex their legs in a completely different way,
Right. Look, okay. Well, I'll put it in my perspective because you bring up an interesting point, and that's also again goes along with the complaints that God of War and Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima and Horizon are all third-person venture cinematic games, blah blah blah, and Sony needs to do something new, right? Which is what you were saying, right? Where like if Sony comes out with a banger every 2 minutes, every show is like 10 bangers, it's gonna become a new standard, and that standard is just gonna become boring. It's like, well, do something different, right? And that's the big complaint. Everyone's complaining about that, right? I was just complaining. I'm not complaining about God of War yet because we only got one game and it took them 6 years to make it. But I did bring up the point that yes, I would like to see Santa Monica for the first time in their friggin' lives not do something that's God of War related. And no, I'm not talking about Fat Princess like Super PS5 whatever. I'm talking about like make a new game.
That is kind of crazy that they've only done God of War. Yeah. Like, granted, they had that space game that they were working on that got canceled because it was too much like Destiny. Allegedly. But allegedly.
Well, they were also working on 6 Days in Fallujah. They were the original developers for that before it got yanked out, and they canceled it.
Were they developing it or were they incubating it? Because those are different things.
They were starting it. The project got picked up elsewhere by a third party. Then third party started like really pushing it forward, and when they brought it forward. That's when it got canceled because of the controversy, and now it's coming back, but it's still a mess. So, but yeah, they were originally working on that project.
Interesting.
So I think that for the most part, they've just stuck with God of War because it's like, after Twisted Metal, like David Jaffe brought up Santa Monica for that, they made God of War, and then they've just been afraid to do everything else because every time they try to do a different project, it always gets canceled. My hope is that with Cory Barlog's directing vision, that they'll have enough direction and vision to be able to produce a new IP for the first time in God knows when. Because they haven't. We haven't seen what they're capable of doing outside of an established franchise. Which is fine for them to work on established franchises, but Insomniac is putting out like 10 freaking games every... I recently learned about Insomniac's like a VR game on Oculus or whatever I think it was, that they made before Sony bought them out in 2018. They had
I think they had a couple of they didn't do The Climb. Well, it was like that game in the snow or something. I forget what it was called.
Well, the one I saw was like a magic game. It's on their website. It's like this game where like you're a magician or whatever, or like you're a wizard and you do magic and stuff. But the
Well,
point
hey,
is,
maybe they could be working on something for PSVR too.
oh, there you go. That could be something else.
That's also potential.
Yeah. But the crazy thing that I'm saying is like these companies, it's. I think the biggest problem is that they've taken forever. Because if you think about it, Last of Us, I mean, Crash had like what 3 games in a racing game. Jack had 3 games in a racing game, and then it had that one game we don't mention, but it was made by a different company. Then
Mm-hmm.
Uncharted had 4 games and an expansion, and then Last of Us had 1 game, and then they brought out a second one 7 years later. So they still haven't technically run their full course with Last of Us in terms of a franchise. They haven't run their full trilogy course. When they run a course on a franchise, they usually hit trilogies. They haven't hit their trilogy yet, so I would expect their next game to be Last of Us Part 3. But I think they need to start reevaluating how they develop because it shouldn't take you 7 years to make a movie. It should take you 3 or 4
What
like
do you
everyone
even
else.
do for part 3, dude? I just I get it, right? Like it, those characters mean a lot to Neil Druckmann and whatever. He's leading the studio, right? So I mean,
Right.
it's
I mean, he's
it's
the
pretty
core
much going
core
to
of
be
the
whatever he
backbone.
wants to do. But like, I just wish that they would just let sleeping dogs lie and just move on. Just
Sleeping
like
Dogs.
we don't need 3 of those games, And I'm sure there are plenty of people who want 3 of those games, and I get it, and I hear you, but just do something else. Let Naughty Dog do a Western. Let Naughty Dog do a space game. Let Naughty Dog do something.
Yeah.
Just let them stretch their legs.
Let's
The same way that I want to see Insomniac try something new, and the same way I want to see Sucker Punch doing Ghost of Tsushima. Right? That's granted, I haven't played the game. Everyone I've talked to that has played the game is like, this game is fantastic. It's like one of the best open world games out there that you can play. Everything is it's intuitive. It's let them try something new. It's the same argument where it's like, yeah, sure, like I would love it if there was a new Sly Cooper game, and there are some people who are like, oh, do you think Sucker Punch will ever come back to it? It's like, I don't want Sucker Punch to come back to it. Like, let them do something else. If someone else wants to make a Sly game like a Sanzaru, right? Let them do it. There are
Insomniac
other
should
places
do
that can do that sort of thing.
Insomniac.
Now, I don't know. I don't know if Insomniac is the studio to do Sly Cooper. I don't know. That doesn't.
They have the tech, dude. All they have to do is just
They
get
have the
right
tech,
story.
sure, but I don't know if they're the studio to do it. It would feel weird to me if the Ratchet and Clank guys were the ones making Sly Cooper. I don't know. I'm not saying they couldn't do it. If they wanted to do it, if the team was excited about it, then fine, go for it. I'm not going to complain there's a new Sly Cooper game, but it just seems odd to me that if they chose to do that sort of thing, especially when they have so many other things they could be working on, like essentially Sunset Overdrive, by the way, which I imagine we're probably going to see come back in some form. It's kind of funny how that game even came about, right? As far as I understand, they pitched that to Sony. Sony didn't want to do the game because Insomniac wanted to keep the IP. They take it to Microsoft. Microsoft let them keep the IP. Sony buys Insomniac, and then they end up getting the IP that they didn't want to fund in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is this like funny game of like telephone that ends up happening there. But
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of funny things, right? I mean, different heads at Sony, different mentalities, right? I mean, for whatever reason, Shuhei Yoshida I forget Sean Layden, they didn't want that game, Sunset Overdrive. They said no to that, and they gave it to Xbox. Or who knows? Maybe Xbox just paid them that much more.
Well,
money
I don't even think Sean was there at that point. I think Jack was still there. It was still Jack Tretton because Sunset Overdrive got revealed in like E3. Well, that was like E3 2013 or something like that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So Jack was still there. Yeah. Jack was still there.
Okay, well there you go. I mean, there was a point where they were like, hey, Insomniac's been making Ratchet and Clank forever for us, but it's not selling anymore. So Insomniac, I mean, I don't know, we don't want your crap right now. They went to Xbox, it flunked, and then all of a sudden they're like, you know what, Insomniac, you've been good friends with us. We'll give you another shot. Here's Ratchet and Clank remaster. We're gonna bring it back, and on top of that, you know what? We're gonna let you do Spider-Man. Boom! They make a hit. Oh look, it's a match made in heaven. All of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's many ways you can look at it, but the point is, it's like, yeah, I find it funny, and I think Sunset Overdrive is gonna come, and I think Sony's a place to be, right? Because everyone that you go, I think each console right now has their niche, right? Nintendo has nostalgia. Sony has action adventure slash 3D games, whatever, and then Xbox has first person and now RPGs because they bought everyone, right? So that's the niches. If you want those type of games, I think Sunset Overdrive would be a success on PlayStation because of that, because that's just what PlayStation is about, right? All their games are like that, and everyone that plays their games love that sort of stuff. I think that's a fair assessment. But yeah, going back to the thing, it's like I want them to make something different. Like Naughty Dog made. I mean, as much as I would like them to go back and make another Jack and Daxter and finish a story that they originally intended to finish, because they said there was still something else that they wanted to say. Right? They wanted to put interstellar, like space traveling or whatever, in the vein of Ratchet and Clank. But I do want to see them do something else. The one thing I thought they were alluding to with Uncharted was that they were going to make a James Bond-like game and fill in that niche. Because they've been making the tropes of film, right? They did horror, survival, zombie stuff. It's not zombies, but sure, whatever. It's still zombies with Last of Us. And they did National Treasure Indiana Jones with Uncharted. But what about doing James Bond now? We haven't had one. I mean, sure, IOI is finally bringing back James Bond, but no one has done a spy thriller.
Oh, don't worry. Rockstar's working on one.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, whenever they decide to bring Agent, I'm still holding out for Agent.
Yeah, no, we'll see that. We'll see that at their show for sure.
It's still coming to PS3.
You know what's wild about the website is that not only does it say it's still coming to PS3, it's the old PS3 font. It's the Spider-Man 3 font. It's not even the new PS3 font that came out in 2009. It's the old one, dude. Is that website still live? Tell me that website's still live.
I'll look it up right now. Hold on. Agent.com, right?
Let me see. Rockstar.com/game/agent.
Yeah.
Oh wow, it doesn't even.
No, I think that.
No, that's through Rockstar's website. Platform PS3 release date TBA. Oh my god. Hold on, what's the official site? It's rockstargames.com/agent. Dude. Oh my god.
For this game as much as anyone thinks that Half-Life 3 is actually going to happen.
Oh my god. That's so great. I can't believe they're still paying to have this website, like the servers for this still up. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay, so all right, so this rumored Sony showcase then. So you're thinking that they might have like a Rivet DLC, standalone type game.
I personally think they have to have something Ratchet and Clank related. 2022 is next year. It's our 20th anniversary. They have to showcase something, right? They can't just leave us out and dry.
I don't know if they do that. I don't know if they're gonna do an event this summer, like if they're gonna do one in July or August, whatever. I don't know if it'll be there because Ratchet and Clank just came out. But I mean, they could definitely. I could see it happening at some point in the next year.
Well, I know for a fact that. Well, I mean, the rumors have been pointing towards July 8th, which falls in line with last year's July outing. So that's why I told you. I sent you the message like save the date July 8th is because I think the rumor and all the rumors are pointing to it. They're getting heavier and heavier every day. They're saying it's going to be this big, 80, 90-minute showcase. And they're gonna have a bunch of games.
I don't know, man. I feel like on some level the July 8th thing is kind of like the Silent Hill thing, where it's just like one person said it, and then another person said it because that person said it, and then another person said it because that person said it, and then it's just sort of like we're not. I mean, obviously we're not gonna know until Sony says anything, and that's. I mean, if no one talked about rumors, then this whole industry of like podcasts and it wouldn't work. There would be nothing to talk about.
There'd be nothing to talk about. But the rumor is that they'll also announce it by Thursday, Friday. So by the end of this week, we should be hearing something. Or like somewhere next week. Now, regarding that, I mean, yeah, sure. Whether it gets announced there or not, I don't think. Maybe it might not. Maybe it could just be a Sunset Overdrive announcement. But the honest answer is, if they have 4 products that they're working on right now, that after Rift Apart finished, they said they still had like 4 to go. And we're seeing Arcane Studios, put out Redfall trailers and all that stuff and a 5-year development on that, while also, simultaneously promoting Deathloop on Sony, and Avalanche is like working on Contraband while also finishing Harry Potter. I think we'll get a title card. That's of something.
Yeah, no, if they're doing a summer event, my guess is the closing announcement of that show would be Spider-Man 2 with a trailer and PS5 exclusive, and that's going to be that would be next year. Rather they'd announce it for next year. I don't know if it would actually come out next year, but that's my assumption.
If they do, they're freaking monsters. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if they can come out with a game a year and all of them are top tier, I mean that's impressive.
Yeah,
it's impressive. But hey, they've got a good team over there.
No, for sure. I mean, there's definitely. I'm hyped. I mean, Insomniac has my money for as much as it, that means anything.
I can't wait for Spider-Man 2. That's for sure.
If they release like a Ratchet and Clank like expansion or whatever, like with Rivet by February next year, and like Spider-Man 2 by the end of the year, I'll be like, dude, they're releasing on a 6-month cadence. This is stupid. Like that's just uncanny level or
Yeah,
unprecedented
that's the
levels of
one thing that I don't.
development.
That's the one reason I don't think they would do like a Ratchet side game is only because like if they're gonna go on one a year, right? How long have they been working on Spider-Man 2, right? I mean, I imagine that's been in pre-production since at least 2018, right? Maybe not in active development because they were working on Miles Morales, right? But Miles Morales is out now, right? So if they've been doing pre-production for 2 years, they already have the infrastructure built for PS5, right? With the remaster, right, of Spider-Man 1.
Of course.
It would make sense. I mean, that would put it, if it comes out fall of next year, that would put it at a 4-year dev cycle, which I mean doesn't seem unrealistic to me if they're going off of a lot of the same assets and a lot of the same tech that they already have. I mean, it could be longer, could be, but that's the thing though, is that I don't know if you want to overload the year,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Because God of War just got pushed back, so now they have 2 exclusives. They also got Gran Turismo allegedly coming out next year as well, so they already have a pretty stacked year, right? This year, they revealed Rift Apart. We got Returnal, and we're supposedly getting Horizon alongside Deathloop. So I would think next year would be, what's that other game? Ghostwire Tokyo would probably be next year. I think it's going to get pushed back to next year. Oh, no, and we're getting Ken this year, right? But I think next year they'll be pushing back quite possibly Ghostwire Tokyo to next year. We'll probably get Ragnarok next year. And then Gran Turismo. So on top of that, to also get, Spider-Man 2 and Ratchet, that's going to be a pretty stacked year for Sony, if I'm being honest.
Sure. They're
essentially feeding PlayStation users all the games they're going to need for the rest of their lives, at this point. Because if they produce enough, they could do the Netflix thing where it's like, I don't need TV shows anymore. I can just watch all of Netflix's releases week on week and be done with it. If they could do that, that's they're essentially creating their own market at that point.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, with that being said, I mean, there's not much else to touch on other than, last thing. So, Abandoned and Silent Hills.
Are you
with, for, or against?
No. Look, I appreciate the conspiracy mentality. Right. I find it entertaining, and I think it's always a fun little mental exercise to make the connections and all that stuff.
Of course.
But I honestly, seeing that from out here, I really feel like you have this little studio out of, where was it? Where are they based? Is it?
I don't remember.
I don't remember where they're based, but you have this little studio out of this European country that no one's ever heard of, that they managed to get on the PlayStation blog, and like all of these people are attaching so much hype and so much expectation onto these people, and I honestly feel like you have this little team that has inadvertently stepped into a spotlight that they may have not been prepared for. And once it actually comes out that it's, it starts with S and ends with L and the title's just Survival or something like that, right? And it's just, I don't want to say like it's just this or just that, because, they're working on these, these people, they're working hard and they're doing what they have to do. I kind of feel bad because they're probably going to have to deal with all of this backlash, all of this, like failed expectation. They're probably going to miss out on a bunch of people that may have tried it out in the first place that are now going to be like, actively against. I mean, granted,
it's not Silent Hill, I'm not buying it or whatever. Yeah.
But here's the thing, granted, right? You're going to have the people who are like, oh, if it's not Silent Hill, I'm not going to buy it. But this game has gotten so much coverage because people think it's Silent Hill that now it's going to have way more eyes on it than it would have ever had before, right?
Right, that's also
even if this is another terrible Life of Black Tiger kind of game, right? Like even if it is that, right? It's still going to have way more attention on it than it ever would have had before had it not gotten swept up in the Silent Hill thing. So no, I do not believe that Abandon is Silent Hill. I don't believe that Kojima has anything to do with this, and my guess is that Phil Spencer has wisened up like he should have right after Silent Hills got canceled. He should have given Kojima the $150 million budget to make Death Stranding. Now, granted, Kojima had a relationship with Sony, and there's an honor-bound culture over there, so maybe they get first dibs or something like that. Like I get it, but my guess is that Death Stranding perhaps didn't perform to Sony's expectations, and Phil
Well, I
Spencer
mean,
sees
to what extent, right?
gap here in the market and says, Hideo, whatever you want to do, we're paying for it, but it goes on Game Pass. And my guess is that it's a horror game. That is my guess, that it is going to be a horror game,
Right.
but it's going to be Xbox and PC exclusive. That's my guess.
Well, to what extent did Sony not get the results that they wanted, right? Because Sony doesn't really tout success stories unless they like go beyond expectation, like with Ghost of Tsushima and this.
That's exactly the point, right?
Right.
Because they weren't hyping it up that, oh, look how many millions we sold and look how well this performed and all this and that. You can kind of read between the lines there and say, yeah, maybe it sold, but it didn't sell as much as they needed to, right? Sly Cooper, right? Thieves in Time sold over 1 million units. By most regards, especially for a $40 game, that's fantastic,
That's
right?
Fun, yeah.
Right, but you didn't read articles back then of Sony saying, "Oh, we can't believe the immense response to Sly Cooper, and we can't wait to make more of these games." They had a DLC episode in production that got canceled. That was going to resolve the cliffhanger that the game ended on. They ended up canceling that because it didn't hit their metrics. So my guess is that because they weren't talking about what a smash success Death Stranding was, that's the reason that it wasn't it didn't meet their expectations.
Well,
they would have told us so.
But the thing about it now is I feel like with PC release they're starting to see a resurgence, right? Because games like Days Gone, that supposedly it made 5 million copies sold, but they didn't want a sequel of it. It hit PC and people start playing on PC, and now all of a sudden you see the big Sony, like the big financial report thing, and they're saying, oh, well, these are staple franchises, and Days Gone was on it. It seems that in a new light now through PC, they're seeing that there is maybe potential. They just had to maybe open up the market because that game is too niche. I think they're noticing. They noticed this with Death Stranding because they allowed it to be released on PC, right? And then it also went to a wider audience. But my thing is, it's like if it wasn't a success, they would have just given it a 60 FPS patch and called it a day. They wouldn't have fully authorized a remaster or director's cut with all this extra stuff,
Maybe, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right there, because if it wasn't, if they didn't see the market potential for a director's cut, which I don't understand why the first version wasn't the director's cut. Like I really don't get. I mean, I understand from a business perspective that director's cuts have always been a reason to re-release the movie, so people buy another version of the same movie they already own on DVD. Like I get that, but for especially someone like Kojima, where they just gave him a bunch of money and let him do. I mean, have you played Death Stranding yet?
I'm gonna get it now, the remaster on my birthday.
Okay, yeah. So when you play that game, it's going to be clear that they just let the guy do whatever the fuck he wanted. That they gave him a blank check and they just do whatever you want, because there's so much of that game where it's like, oh my god, it's like just dense. Where oh wow, but. And I don't mean that in a negative sense, right? Like I'm glad that there are some auteurs inside of the game industry that Kojima's a lot like a Christopher Nolan, right? Where because his games hit a certain financial metric, he kind of got to do what he wanted, right? Now maybe this one didn't hit it, but no, you know what? I think you're absolutely right, actually, that if they're going to go forward with a director's cut and they're going to go forward with spending more money on re-releasing this thing for PS5 with new content and marketing that again, then yeah, maybe it did better than they may have expected, and maybe the PC sales are something to are contributing to that.
They have to factor it in, right? Especially
of course.
If they want PS Now to ever, or some stream service to ever compete with Game Pass, they need to factor in now more than ever PC sales.
Yeah, for sure.
You just opened up something else that I found interesting. I was just thinking about it. So with that being said, oh crap, I just forgot. Damn. Oh my god, you got me when you said Death Stranding was amazing. I started thinking about playing the game, and like how all people were saying it's like this giant Amazon simulator or whatever.
I really enjoyed that game because it's very meditative. Mm-hmm. Like it's not a traditional action game, and I'm so glad that there was space in the AAA sphere for something that didn't play like every other third-person shooter that you've ever played before,
Right.
So on that alone, I really enjoyed it. And I think I played it for something like, gosh, I must have played that game for like 80 hours or something. I mean, just like wandering around and playing it in that way. But it's one of those things where it was like, I had the one experience and it's like, I don't need to do that again, Right. So I don't know if I'll do the director's cut, but
Okay, well, I can't find it, but now I remembered. Okay, so one of the things I was having with Michael, like as part of the argument, he was saying exclusives suck, this and that, blah blah blah. One of the things I also brought up later on after you had been like left, and I thought about it for some more days, is that, and we've talked about this, right? In the age of capitalism, not to bring in too much politics into this, but in the age of capitalism, there's competition, and competition drives forward the industry, and it drives forward the economy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
with that being said, Xbox did something horrible and amazing to the video games industry. They bought all the FPS RPG Western RPG makers of the entire world, and just basically yeeted them for themselves, right? Aside from EA, they pretty much own every Western like big AAA RPG or FPS maker, at this point, or they have some form of partnership with them. And that is the worst thing ever for the consumer, because now anybody that fell in love with any of those franchises or companies or whatever, they now have to go to Xbox or PC to play those games, right?
Sure, yeah.
And that's bad. But what is the good? The good is, in a thriving, industry of competition, there needs to be answers for holes. And Xbox created a giant, like 12 studio hole in Sony's like backyard, which is, the PlayStation. You now do not have access to many of these companies' future games.
Yeah, yeah,
And
totally. Yeah.
not just their games, but their genres, because they were the ones creating that. Sony didn't bother making us, Elder Scrolls, because they didn't have to. Bethesda was there. But the
Yeah.
good of it is that now that hole is up. It's in the name of competition. They can go the Nintendo route, call it a day, forget about everything, and just produce PlayStation studios forever. Or they can put their foot down and say, no, you cannot just take away all these experiences from our gamers. Rise up, make new partnerships, and bring up new games within those genres from new minds and new artistic directions to compete against those games. Now, sure,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a fan of Bethesda, you're going to be upset. I could understand, as a person who loved Fallout for the most part. I grew up with Fallout 3 and Oblivion. I can understand where people are upset. And Skyrim was this hit, and the big famous quote. It's like, maybe I'd stop remaking it if you stop buying it. From
Sure.
Todd Howard. But the honest answer is I see benefits where most people don't. The benefit on the game side, game development wise, is now they have to focus on less, right? You reduce your workforce from PlayStation, you save all that money, put it back into the game, make the game better. Every Fallout game and every Skyrim game, every Elder Scrolls game has always come out broken, right? But now on Xbox, Microsoft's going to be like, you can't make our game look like ass. You can't bring out broken games that are going to break our console. We'll give you the QA testing firms, we'll give you the money, but your games cannot come out broken. So if I'm a fan of that franchise, I now find the safety of knowing that because they are backed by Microsoft, I won't get broken save files that are going to corrupt and destroy my PS5. In the same way that Fallout 3 did to my PS3 at one point, right? So there's a benefit in that, at both game development wise and of course, QA testing wise. And the benefit from PlayStation side is that, assuming PlayStation plays their card right, which they have been, they are going to make partnerships, which they have, with new companies that are being made now to challenge those games that are now missing in PlayStation's market. We got a new partnership. That company that we were talking about, that they showed off the partnership, I forgot the name of the company, right? But you remember the partnership at the Summer Games Fest, right before
The shooter game, the shooter studio, yeah.
Yeah. Those guys aren't just the heads of Call of Duty. They're the heads of Call of Duty Zombies. So specifically, they made the arcadey fun stuff that over encompassed a great portion, or became a giant pillar of Treyarch's like Call of Duty games. So they have some bright minds in that company. They picked up Jade Raymond from Stadia's exclusive BS partnership that they failed. So they picked up another intelligent person that was wasting away at Ubisoft in the first place. In my opinion, she brought up some of the best titles in Ubisoft. I don't remember all of them, but I know Blacklist was like one of her last ones before she quit. And I love Blacklist.
Wasn't she behind the first Assassin's Creed?
Well, she was behind it, but Patrice Desilets was the main guy in that one.
Mm-hmm.
I know Jade Raymond was working in Assassin's Creed at one point, but she also did Syndicate, which is, in my opinion, better than Unity. And that was another big Assassin's Creed game that was like a big hit, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is how we want Assassin's Creed. We don't want it to be, we want it to have."
Whoa! What the fuck? I don't mean to cut you off here. I just looked up her history here. She was the producer on Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
In 2007, she was the producer on Guns of the Patriots in 2008.
She has
And
a long
then
track
she was
record.
the executive producer for Assassin's Creed 2, Bloodlines, Blacklist, Watch Dogs, Unity. Yeah. And then ended up over at EA doing Star Wars Battlefront.
Yep. And then
Yikes.
she went to go make her own company.
Yeah, that's true. She went to go do her own studio, and then they ended up not putting anything out.
Exactly. Stadia, you know, the Stadia deal fell through, and now Sony picked them up, right? And then Sony has
Yeah.
another company comprised of literally everyone that's ever worked on Call of Duty, or not everyone, but like many people that have worked on Destiny, Halo, and Call of Duty. All the big name shooters, pretty much. And I think even
Mhm.
Doom. So they've just given money to produce new titles into our industry that are going to surprise us. I mean, yeah, we could stay with the same stagnant. I mean, you could look at it in a bad way, obviously, and just say, "Well, we just lost a bunch of exclusives. I'm sad, blah blah blah. And we're gonna miss out on all this." Or you can look at it for the positive that it has. I choose to look at both. You know, I am sad that I'm gonna miss out, but I'm also happy that Xbox is gonna have a more competitive edge, which means they're gonna be able to produce more and bring more games to the table. And then Sony's going to be doing the same thing. They're now going to, for the first time in a long time, they're going to be producing FPS games again through partnerships. They're not owning these companies. These companies can ride out whenever they want, but they will have these partnerships at the moment with these deals where they're going to bring up new companies to fill up the gap that has been now made by Xbox. And the only thing that's
Mhm.
going to happen is what I'm seeing is basically Sony's doing what everybody says. It's like throw money at the indie companies to do their crazy stuff at a bigger scale. Well, that's what's going on now. Sony just grabbed a bunch of money, they pulled it up, they threw it at the China initiative for a bunch of Chinese developers to come into the market. And now they're throwing it at these three new companies that are going to supposedly make something big enough to match up against, whatever Starfield and and whatever Outer Worlds and Fallout 6 or whatever,
Sure.
or Fallout 5. So I think there's a lot to look out for there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if they're willing to measure up to the task of filling a Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Neverwinter Nights sized hole in the industry, then sure, there's a lot of potential there. But it really rests upon whether or not they're willing to actually do something about it, right?
But they
Because I
have to,
mean,
'cause that's-
Horizon is the closest thing they have to an RPG, and that's not even really.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of an RPG, but it's really more of an action game than it is an RPG. It's an action RPG. I guess we're going to combine both of them. But as far as something like, for hardcore fans, like like a Wasteland, or the kind of stuff that Obsidian puts out, or In Exile, or Bethesda, or anything like that, who knows? I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to find a team or build a team that can match that caliber of quality, unless they have the drive to do so. And from all of the games they currently have in production, like maybe they think that they don't have to. Maybe they'll something will happen where we'll see something. But again, just Sony can only stretch themselves so thin, right? I mean, this kind of goes back to what I was saying about Xbox, where they have the backing of Microsoft, right? Which, they have billions of dollars in capital that they're sitting on.
Yeah.
And yeah, Sony may be sitting on a lot of cash right now, but it's not billions of dollars, and their market cap is nowhere near that of Microsoft.
That's the funny thing. It's like I was reading, for as crap as Twitter is, there was a funny comment that one user made that it actually hit with me. It's like Sony isn't fighting Xbox anymore. They're fighting Microsoft, right? Because before Xbox was like their own thing, and Bill Gates was like, I don't really care about Xbox. It's its own thing, whatever. Let it do what it did. They sat down and now they're playing a hard game, and it's no longer. They're now hitting Microsoft, and Microsoft just did the Windows 11 thing where they merged. They're merging Xbox fully integrated into Windows now. So, you're no longer fighting the one team. You're fighting the whole company.
Yeah.
Well, Sony was backing PlayStation. Microsoft's going all in. There's a different story there.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And I think that's what's going on now. But it's like you said. I mean, whether they do it or not, I mean, it depends. But that's the name of the game. That's the nature of the beast, right? With capitalism, it's competition. So it's up to Sony to.
No, look, I hope that they have some kind of product to compete with it. Now. The real question is whether or not they're going to do that. Whether or not they look at their first party portfolio and they see that Obsidian, Bethesda, In Exile sized hole, in their portfolio, and whether or not they want to do something about it. And quite frankly, from all the stuff they have announced right now, if they do have an answer to it, I don't see it. I don't see us seeing it for several years.
Well,
at a minimum.
Here's the only reason I'm bringing this up, right? Because from my perspective, there's a reason why in their portfolio they decided to sign exclusivity for Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. It's clear that they knew the value of those studios and wanted to bring some of that table over to the exclusivity side of PlayStation. Now they know that whole, like, yeah, sure, they could have started a franchise with Deathloop, but they're never gonna get that again. Same thing with Ghostwire Tokyo. If it hits off and it becomes a franchise, they're not gonna get the next game. So with that being said, they must know now if those two games are a hit, like if PlayStation users buy that, they will demonstrate to PlayStation that yes, not having games like that will be a hit in their portfolio. So I guess right now,
but I mean those aren't the kind of games that Bethesda makes, though. I mean, obviously yes, Bethesda publishes them, but when I'm talking about Bethesda, I'm talking about Fallout, I'm talking about Elder Scrolls, Starfield, or Obsidian's types of games, like those. That's a different kind of game. And right now, from what Sony has announced, at the very least, the way they seem to be playing it is, look, you want Western RPGs? Yeah, maybe you're not going to get those here. You're going to get JRPGs here, right? Persona, you're only going to play that here for the time being, right? Or for the time being, you're only going to play that here. Final Fantasy 16, you're only going to play that here. Now, granted, they're going to be available on PC, right? Which is fantastic, right? More options. It's opening the door for more people. But it seems that they're leaning into their strengths, right? Which is the Japanese side of the role playing equation, whereas Microsoft is leaning into the Western side of it. So
that was the original plan, right? I mean, Sony, when they started off PS5, it was like, their big plan was, we made something great, we're not going to change right now, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, right? Why change something that's not broken? But I mean, they paid for Fallout 4 to be free on their PS Plus collection, so they know that not having that there anymore.
No, they know that there's a value to Western RPGs. I'm not saying that they're just going to ignore it, but it's I feel like they will have a response to it, yes, but I feel like it's going to be a very, very long time before we see it. I'm talking years.
Right now, they're spinning the wheel. There's no way they're gonna. It's what I've been saying, right? Everyone's was complaining when PS5 was coming out, and they're like, "Oh, well, Xbox is doing the whole smart delivery. Why aren't you guys doing it?" And then they announced it 6 months later, right? It's like you have to understand that regardless of whether a business intentionally wants to do something for the purpose of hurting you or not, or getting your money or not. At the end of the day, these business plans, this is bureaucracy, right? Their business plans are going to take 6 months to change. There's no way that they can tomorrow just say, oh, we flipped all our plans, like we're done. All our contracts got flipped. These contracts are set in stone. So even if, like on the day of Xbox's release, they said, oh crap, backwards compatibility is actually important, like last year. We're not going to see a pivot for that until like the next year minimum, because they have to go past all.
It's a hulking machine. There's hundreds of moving parts, and if they're going to turn the ship in one direction, there's all these little things that have to happen before it even starts moving. Exactly.
And then that's pretty much where they're at right now. I think personally, we're going to see a massive change in the industry for sure. And like we said, Game Pass is a freaking deal right now. I'm actually considering spending the $35. Just to get an Xbox and get Game Pass.
Just to get the Xbox?
Yeah, and play Gears and all that stuff. But I also have to put my mind to it, because, I mean, do I really want to value Xbox over Ghost of Tsushima right now? Which I haven't played yet. And Ghost of Tsushima right now is like, $40. Do I want to put it over Last of Us Part 2, which I haven't played yet? I mean, I know everyone says their own opinion, but I mean, I might like it. Who knows? And then there's Kena in August. So, I mean, how far am I going to... I guess maybe when I start working again, I'll be able to assess how much money I can waste my life on gaming, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
And not to mention the Switch, right? Whatever the Pro ever comes out, I gotta waste money on that too. Who knows, right? But whatever. The point is, I'm getting enticed. Xbox is making a compelling deal, and just to wrap up the show now, the final comment is people aren't seeing this, but the way I see it is right now, PlayStation costs money. It's $400 to $500 to jump in, plus $70 per title. That's expensive. If I were to go to Xbox, it would be the same deal. I would go to Xbox and pay $60 or $70 per game. But because of Game Pass, I can now buy PS5 and get my games there and still throw $35 at Xbox per month to get all their crap too and not have to pay extra.
Mm-hmm.
Which is how I see it. So the only thing Xbox did is now they made themselves a possibility for me without me having to leave PlayStation. As a gamer who enjoys gaming as a whole and not necessarily just the brands or whatever, this is good for me because now I can get both and not have to worry about breaking my wallet in a specific moment.
Yeah.
And I'll probably end up, like doing something for Nintendo where I'll just credit card it or something in the future, whatever. But the point is, I think right now we're in a beneficial point. And if you're a PC gamer like yourself, I mean, who cares, right? Just play on PC. Everything's coming to PC. So
Yeah.
But anyways, with that being said, I think it's time for the end of the show. Guys, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, Sergio. Thank you for helping me with this.
Thanks for
episode.
having me, man. It was always fun.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, so my website, that's the best place to find me, srsotolongo.com, spelled the same way you're seeing it on the screen right there, Sotolongo.
Well, it's not. I created my own thing, so it's not there.
Right. But right, so srsotolongo.com. So that's
I'll
where you'll be able to find my podcast, and once the book is finally out, you'll be able to get it through there. Basically anything that I'm working on, if you want to keep up with it, my website's the best place to catch up with it. So feel free to bookmark that.
Your website. I'm trying to load it in right now so you can see it. Yeah, so this would be the website right here. You got Apple Podcasts, Spotify, perfect. And oh wow, you got the the Twitch stream embedded.
Yeah. Well, so right now, the way the website's structured is that once you go to srsotolongo.com, it's going to take you straight to the SR show. Eventually, once I start, I have products that I'm selling on there, and once we get subscriptions going and all that stuff, then the front page will change a little bit. Like you'll still be able to get right to the show by going straight to that link. But as the website stands right now, it really is just sort of like the front page is my podcast, and then you can read some of the blogs. With that's SR essays for you. So
okay, well that's.
But yeah.
Well, wonderful, man. I can't wait for your book to come out. I mean, I don't know. I don't read.
I can't wait either, man.
But I'm excited for you. It's always like, I guess, like an achievement that people go through, right, when they write their own book, and they get to put a piece of themselves out in the world like that. So I'm glad. And then,
I know I can't wait for people to read it right now. I'm in that stage where I'm in the second draft where, the first draft, you kind of cheat where it's like, oh, she hated that he said this, or, she felt this or that. And now it's sort of like getting rid of all the parts where they're telling you how it feels. And then they're, now I'm showing you how it feels. I'm unpacking those emotions. And that's really where you get into the nitty gritty of detail and sort of like getting into characters' pasts. And it gives them all such a rich texture. And I love hanging out with those characters, and I love being there. So it's fun, man. It's fun. And I can't wait for everyone to read it. So excited.
That's good to hear, man. I mean, I probably won't because I suck at reading, but I'll probably read the Spark Notes.
Well, hey, look. So what I'm doing with the audiobook, this is the plan right now. This could change, but the plan right now is to put out the audiobook in chapters as a podcast. Right, put those up with ads, and then if you want to get rid of the ads, you can subscribe straight through my website for $1, and you get the whole show ad free. So
just like Audible, screw that. I'll do it myself.
No, look, it'll be on Audible too. Like if you want to support me, the best way you can do that is to buy the books and to spend as much money as you freaking want. But I don't I want to make sure that there's as little friction as possible for people to be able to enjoy the content, right? Because a novel is a heavy investment, right? I mean, that's hours of time that you have to sit down, read, pay attention. Every time I try to read, 5 minutes in, my mind's already wandering. Like I really got to focus if I want to, actually consume something in terms of reading it. The way I look at it with the audiobook is that breaking it up into chapters and then, having those chapters out as podcast episodes, instead of asking you, hey, do you have 10 hours to devote to my story? It's like, hey, the next time you're driving to work, if you got 20, 30 minutes, listen to the first chapter of the book, and if you like it, listen to the rest, So I feel like that's going to be a way that's going to be easier to onboard people onto the story than necessarily asking you to invest in the whole book. You know what I'm saying?
No.
But we'll see if it works.
It makes total sense, honestly. And I'm more prone to listen to a podcast than I am to read a book. Not saying that I wouldn't try and pick up a book again in the future, but it's just my mind where I'm at right now, both emotionally, even through the depression episode, people know already that I'm depressed too. So where I'm at right now, it's like, it's outside my realms of possibility. I'm still trying to finish school. This is my last semester, my last class. So, I'm still pushing hard. Well, anyways, with that being said,
man.
I appreciate you sharing the book. If you guys want to follow him, go ahead and follow his websites up on the screen. It's srsotolongo.com. For us in the Co-op Syndicate, as always, you know where to find us. Any social media or anywhere you want to find us, it's at Co-op Syndicate, at COOPSYNDICATE. You can find us on YouTube, Twitch. Join us live. We have a Discord that we're trying to set up still. I mean, it's available, but it's not. It's still not in its full thing. But if you guys want to talk to us, we'll try and make it a possibility. You can always chat with us at any times. We try to be live on Tuesdays or Saturdays. Right now, it's a little flip floppy with our schedules. Michael will be back with us hopefully next week, if not the following week after that, for the PlayStation conference. If it does come out, it's all alleged. This is all alleged, rumors. You can find Michael at Michael C. Moore. You can find me at JG_Mark1 gaming on YouTube, or in my social media, just at JG_Mark1. I just recently released the walkthrough for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and I'm getting a new part in every day, so there's a lot to be seen. All right, well, see you later, guys. Catch you in the next one.
All right, man.